How's it going? So today we're going to do a video on the Kelp highway hypothesis, sort of, and also there's different kinds of stone tools or ways of making possible boats that could have been used. And so I do know for a fact that people eventually did go by land, and it also probably went by, the ocean along the coast. And the Kelp highway hypothesis to me is a reasonable thing. I know that I have bought and ate kelp myself, so I know that you could literally sustain yourself even if you did no hunting or fishing. You could survive without dying, in a sense. Well, you'd need to get water, but if you had that time, there have been glaciers right close to the shore probably, so you certainly could have got fresh water.
You have a whole source of fresh water right there.
Right, so we're going to start with watching this really quick part of the video. This is an hour video. We're only going to watch a couple seconds, just enough to get what they talk about for the Kelp highway hypothesis. So here we go.
Rather than walking through an ice-free corridor, the very first Americans could have paddled down a kelp highway. There are kelp forests along the Pacific coast, from North to South America, all the way to Patagonia.
Right, so that's all we're going to do with that. So, all right, so here's my art basically trying to give an idea. I do know that there's a thinking in the DNA that this is qDNA did this, at least to the 13,000 years ago. Not necessarily that it had to have been all the way down, other than if you look at the bottom, 12,000 years ago, there's qDNA, so it more than likely went all the way down. So also I wanted to address that there currently has been a thing of redating of Monteverde too, and it's no longer thought it's 14,500, but more along the lines of no older than 8,200.
And I know David Pompiani, he's invited those researchers onto his podcast, and he has a couple episodes. I haven't watched the second one yet, which is the original researcher's point of view with all this new information that's come out.
Right. And I told you, I'm for whatever the truth is. I don't have I'm not like Graham Hancock where I have some need for it to be a certain thing so that my ideas are supported. I look at what the evidence is, and then I try to build my ideas off of the evidence, like stepping on little stones to the speculation. I never like making speculations like out of thin air.
Yeah, neither do I.
I find that those are just worthless to me. Oh, it's nice you have an idea of nothing connected to it.
Yeah. Yeah, even this far back, I'm not seeing any R1b DNA like he's claiming.
Oh, well, yes. Not only that, R1b, I'll go ahead and add it. R1b wouldn't have gone by water anyways. It would be 100% by land. And the reason we know it would be this way is because it was the ancient North Eurasian related DNA. And we know exactly what it did. It went to the Great Lakes. So and all through land, unless he's, trying to speculate that they're the reason there's canoes there. But that's not much of a seafaring thing, going. We know, like I said, what DNA did what. There's no R1 DNA did that. Okay, so I'll add the thing to show you. This is what R1 DNA would have done because it went through and towards the Great Lakes in the middle of the country, all across land, and even down in Mexico, all across land. I'm talking about the ancient North Eurasian related migration. So that's what it would have been, and it's just not feasible that it supports his conclusion that it has to be R1 DNA related to people that were, because this also is another thing that shows ancient North Eurasians and the migrations of R1A, R1B, R2A, and also qDNA, which are the ones that really went to the Americas. So, it's not like we don't know. That's why I always think it's crazy, the Graham Hancock stuff, because he literally acts like we don't know how people moved around and it's like his ideas are almost like pre-DNA, even though, as you said, there is a blog where he has that, it's not not him himself, of course, someone else that he supports, had this conclusion that white people who are R1B went to the Americas, and they're his, part of his Atlantean. If you notice R1B on this map, no part of them are not R2, not R1B or R1A. None of them are ocean related. All their migrations are land.
Yeah, it's all continental stuff, like far inland.
Right.
Yeah.
So to postulate that they're the ones that were doing ocean and non-land stuff,
yeah, it doesn't check out.
Doesn't in any way support the evidence in any way. So, anyways, I'm going about that, but
yeah, just a little sidetrack.
Yeah, just a little sidetrack to say he's wrong, of course, which
Yeah, and even in his latest book, which focuses on the Americas, he doesn't really get into the DNA stuff. He just talks about the earthworks in North and South America and like some possible Egyptian connection.
Yeah.
Ridiculous.
Well, I told you, to me, any supposed Egyptian connection would have to be under 5,000.
Mm-hmm.
Anything someone said that was related in any way to Egypt that's older than 5,000 is wrong.
It's hard to have an Egypt connection if there's no Egypt yet.
Well, that's true also, but what I mean is that we do know eDNA that right at the time that they started, almost transitioning from the, in a sense, madrasas, which are like sort of that end up becoming step pyramids, that those people right at the stage when it was almost becoming step pyramids leave Africa or Egypt and go all the way to the Balkans, and probably related to Proto-Indo-Europeans, who then go all the way to Siberia, and Siberians then go all the way to the Tlingit in the Pacific Northwest, and then the Tlingit go all the way down to California, and then people from California that got those ideas go all the way to Peru. Pyramids, step pyramids, and and it's mythology spread, not really these people spreading how to build. That's like I told you before, I really find it ridiculous. No one's spreading the technology of building these. It's why they're all kind of built different, but they seem to have some similar thinking to them. But because the mythology is similar.
And not just that, it's evolving over time as it goes into different groups. Yeah,
absolutely. I totally agree. And to me, it starts probably shell mounds, then earth mounds, and then out of that then becomes more pyramid stuff in a sense. But I don't want to go into all that. I'm just saying that he's wrong. Graham Hancock is so fucking. His ideas are like a fucking child just coming up with shit and has no clue or really hasn't researched, what's going on. It's I would say it's laughable, but it's not funny because a lot of people believe him, so it's not really funny.
Well, that's the thing. If you can get a Netflix special, I mean, just his last book alone, it's sloppy. It's just thrown together. It's just like 1800s antiquarian stuff.
Yeah, that's really sad because freaking a lot of people, follow him and believe in his ideas. It's really freaking sad and sickening. So, all right, but on with him. Let's talk about reality.
Yeah. So,
or the most likely thing of reality. That's what I, am trying to demonstrate. That I try to find what's the most likely to be true. What seems to actually fit the evidence. Then I build ideas. I don't have an idea, then try to find evidence that fits it. So I do think, like I said, it's possible, especially with the 12,000 DNA being qDNA being in South America and Chile, and knowing that it came in probably about 16,000 and is 13,000 in Montana is not outrageous. And then we know they pretty fast went down there, and to do it that fast, the easiest way would have been by the waterway, not by land. Especially also there's the Darien Gap between South America and Central America that people find it almost impossible to travel today, and where almost everything there will kill you, and there's like no fresh water, and it's absolutely brutal. There's like needles on these trees down there. I don't know if you know about this. There's needles on these trees. If you get poked with them, you are almost chance gonna die of an infection.
Oh, no kidding.
Oh yeah. And there's shit tons, and the terrain is brutal, so you could easily just fall and bump into a tree, you're dead. You're not dead that instant, but you were going to die of an infection.
Yeah, I didn't know about that.
Wow. Oh, yeah. We should actually do a thing on Darien Gap because it's pretty.
Yeah, because I've researched a bit of Central and South American history, especially in the time period that I focus on, but I'm nowhere near as familiar as I am with North America.
Right.
I had no idea about those plants.
It's brutal.
It sounds like it.
And like I said, to me, why it's important to understand is it's almost unpassable. That's why there's no freaking highway. Anyway, so there's no highway. There's no major cities. Yeah, it's amazing that people actually somehow get past that, but they probably take it by boat and go to Panama because it's literally like uninhabitable place to go. But like I said, we'll do a thing on it because the reason why it's important to me, how in the fuck did people get from Central America down into South America? And then also we know for a fact that South American ideas, including the potato, including language, the Chichiban language. You're like, what's that, right?
No, I've heard of it before, but haven't researched it.
Well, I'm going to have to go ahead and show that because I want you to understand what I'm talking about and why this is important is it has to be water. At least at this point, no matter if they were land the entire way, when they get down to this point, it's almost humanly impossible. Like I said, that's why we need to talk about it because a lot of people, they just assume, they just walk all the way down there. What's the big deal? It's a big deal.
Yeah.
So, once you understand that, you have to come up with other theories. You get my point. You can't keep the same theory, like, they just walked, when you find out, walking is probably impossible or the chance of it is very limited.
Yeah, the chance of actually dying. Before you even get to the center of the Darien Gap.
Right. Most people wouldn't make it. And so because of that, I know that there has to have been watercraft to get down there because people did get down there and back up. So
I haven't researched the language, but I've seen these little seats.
Right. So as you also know, the seats show that the ideas spread up from the south, up past the Darien Gap, and then it also goes to the Caribbean, which tells you once again, it's boats. Because
if you're getting up to the Caribbean, you can't just like hop from island to island. The gaps are pretty wide.
Yeah, I'm going to share another one. It's a little bit easier to see. It takes the whole. So it's important. The Istmo Columbia area is in the Darien Gap, and all that stuff is related. So it's the green. I know it's hard to see, but it's the green, which is those little brown things, or kind of color browns, whatever. And then it goes into Panama and a little bit up. All that's the same language. That's the Chichiban languages.
So are those like separate cultures or separate like sub-languages within that language family?
There you go. See, you already know.
Okay.
You're correct. Yeah, you're correct.
Okay.
The reason they're different colors is because they're sub-languages. But if you notice, they go past the Darien Gap. How in the fuck did they do that?
That's a good question.
It has to be boats. Like I said in the other picture that I show, because the seats, we already, went past it into the Caribbean. We know it had to be boats by the Caribbean. And so the most likely thing is boats also, But and I think, I don't remember exactly, but I think it's like 7,000 to 8,000. They think that those languages went up there. I'd have to go look at it again. I don't remember off the top of my head about the Chichiban languages. But it's old. It's not like 2,000 years or something. Because this reason is important too. People don't understand that when the Caribbean was settled, as far as I remember, the first real settling was like 6,000. And then I think it's 3,000 or 2,000 maybe. The next wave comes in with pottery and like slaughters or displaces in some way all the other people right from South America, all the other people, which would probably be when they brought the seats to them. But so all of those people then get displaced. But the language of Chichiban is older, and it actually, as you saw, wasn't in the Caribbean, even though the chairs were, which is good evidence that we're looking at two different migrations. One is the language migration, which was older. You get my point?
Mm-hmm.
So the
like
language.
So like you'd have that first language migration, and then this like
the
presumably
seats have to be a later time, because you see the seats, although at first you would think, aha, they must have passed with the Chichipan languages. That cannot be the thing, because then the Chichipan languages will be directly related to the Caribbean language, which they are not. The Caribbean languages are the Cobb, and I think the Cobb are related to the Arawak. So it's another one, like in what Colombia was that? I know so much, but I also like forget stuff, exact details of every single place in the world. But anyways, but it's not related to the Chichipan languages is my point. Chichipan languages are older. So when they went up, it would have been older. And when these seats moved, it had to have been younger. Anyways.
Yeah, later in time, you would expect these groups to be interacting, which we know they were.
Yes. But anyways, I'm going back to, like I was saying, to pass the Darien Gap for sure, they're doing it with boats of some kind. So.
Oh yeah, definitely. Not just along the coast, but along the rivers too, heading inland. I'd rather do that than
it's
just walk through
mountainous.
the
The
freaking jungle.
Darien Gap is mountainous as hell. So there's no river to go up and over. There's no, anyways.
Yeah, that's what I'm talking about.
Like I said, we'll do a video on it because it is important to understand how did this happen. And we'll look at the groups that went back and forth and then try to figure out something reasonable. Not Graham Hancock, who just makes shit up, look at the actual terrain, the actual stuff, and then try to figure out, well, what happened and why would it be such a big deal as Damien knows it is? Because that actually helps you grasp the monumental, thing that it had to have been to do this. So, but anyways, the Kelp Highway hypothesis, like I said, I do think it's a legitimate speculation. I absolutely agree with it. I don't think it was the only way, but I absolutely think it was a way it happened. The next picture, one of the things also, besides looking at the Q DNA, which is the male DNA, I also care about, they didn't go men by themselves. Females also, likely went in this migration.
Mm-hmm.
And sometimes men go by themselves, but not always. So there's two main DNAs that look like it's reasonable to think they went down the coast, because the DNA dispersals are north and south in a way that they can tell the oldest DNA, and these things probably relates to the coast. So I'm the one that put the little dotted arrows along the coast, because the one offered, the people that the DNA actually didn't do the coast itself. But since I look deeper into the DNA, I know, it even says that there's likely that they were coastal migrations. So QDNA probably brought both these down, or one might have been brought down by Q, one brought down by C1b, which is what people consider population Y sometimes, which, I hate when they say that. Just give me the haplogroup, because once again, like it allows people like Graham Hancock to then just make up all kinds of bullshit because we haven't said who it is. So in other words, I wish they would tell me it looks like C1b went with D, female D, or C1b, because really actually by looking at this, I would actually say it looks like B, that B went with C1b, because where B comes from, being more in like China area, it's way more likely then that C1b was down there and would have gone over.
Okay.
And the other one looks like it's going where Q was. D looks like it would have been with Q, because I know where in the people started migrations. I'll go ahead and just real quick show a thing so people can understand, because I think it helps. At least it helps me to like see what people are doing. Because like I said, then you can understand. I don't want you to believe me. I want you to understand because you see it and you can grasp it yourself. So this shows C1b, C1a, C2. Okay, on the right side, that's China and Southeast Asia and stuff, and then there's Japan. C1a goes to the bottom of Japan, just so you can see that, and C1b goes down into Australia, which you see on the other map. You see on the left hand side, it shows C1b goes to Africa, but C1b somewhere in Southeast Asia shoots up into China, almost across from Japan, and then from there goes over into the Americas and becomes population Y. Like I said, they don't give us the haplogroups. So if you notice that, and then, like I said, the haplogroup B, what it's doing, the female, it's literally starting from that same area. So I'll remove that, and I'll show you the Q and C together, so you can also grasp how one is more closer to China and one's more closer to Siberia. They're both went, but they didn't, So I show C1b and C2. C2 is like connected to Nadane, or at least the areas that are in there that are like that, have heavy in their thing. The other one, C1b, you see how one of them goes by the C2 is like, in a sense, the south side of Lake Baikal, but C1b is in China, nowhere near Lake Baikal, never even touched it.
Yeah, a lot further south.
Which is where that female line of B came from. So
yeah, I have the blog open in another tab. The overlap's pretty convincing.
You see what I'm trying to say?
Yeah.
And then the D looks like it follows the same route that Q did.
Yeah.
So that's why, to me, once again, once you understand what these things are, I hate when they just show like blotter maps of the dispersals. Not very fucking helpful, because you don't know where they started, what routes they probably took, you know what I'm saying? And if you don't know that, it's hard to figure out, well, who was with who.
Mm-hmm.
Anyway.
Yeah, they're just throwing everything onto one map. Not super helpful.
Right. And so like people like Graham Hancock, because they're like, oh, people from Australia and Indonesia have matched the people in South America. Maybe they went straight across. And you're like, that is not what happened.
Yeah, Graham's leaving out a lot of context there.
Shit tons of context.
Yeah.
Which I tried to show. That's why I had to make my own map, because nobody is showing it as clearly as I'm showing it by putting all this together. Anyways, and like I said, once I did these, that's actually after the fact that I was able to look at this and realize, oh, I bet that C1b took B females, and probably D females went with Q, because then I could see where they're moving from. Anyways.
Hey, yeah.
Well, and that's why, Tim, you and me are the same in the fact I want the details.
Oh, yeah.
Because that is how we're going to actually figure this shit out. Not by freaking just guessing and throwing dirt clods at the wall.
Yeah, give me the heat maps. Give me the data tables, the site surveys. That's the stuff I want to dig into.
Right. Which is why I think that we're a good match in trying to figure this stuff out together, because we both have this similar thinking where everyone else is kind of like, just like I said, calling it population Y. There is no such thing. Tell me which haplogroup you're talking about. I had to figure it out myself. and like I said, then once I did that, then I plotted it like you'd plot stuff. And it was only after plotting that and then plotting the females that I realized, oh, now I think I know who took what female.
Yeah, and the same's, it's pretty much the same for me when it comes to mapping out archaeological sites and artifacts. Like I'll read like paragraphs or entire chapters, and I understand the information,
right?
But I've noticed like actually plotting it on a map and visualizing it that way, like a continental scale and close up, seeing how it relates to the topography and all that, it really helps with understanding these big topics.
Right. And you get, and then you can make assumptions, and like I say, from that. It reminds me, I've been working forever, like trying to figure out both high gods, which are one kind of god, usually related to the couple, the divine couple or divine twins or the sun and the moon sort of thing. But I also want to know it all, really. I also want to know, I know at some point, one of those, like the sun, turns into a supreme god, or a god of the sky becomes a supreme god, not particularly the sun always. And so I've been working on it, and I kind of figured it out, the supreme god it is. And here's a map that I just made, because I realized it follows haplogroup T, which goes into the Sahara 9,000 years ago from the area of Iraq and Syria. And it relates to Southeast Turkey, and it relates to Iran, but I just show that where it left to go to Africa. Almost everywhere it goes is like hotbeds of the supreme deity, including the one in purple that I show, the South Sudan speakers. They have a particular Koth, or whatever it is, supreme deity that relates to cattle and the creator, and he created humans and all kinds of stuff. And he also relates to the sun and the moon, and they say his necklace is a rainbow. Anyways,
Oh,
He also is a
that's
thunder
interesting.
deity, and one of these times we'll do a whole thing on explaining that and their whole cattle mythology, because and in fact they don't even kill cattle. They're almost like India, sacred cattle, to the point that they only kill them not for meat because they're hungry, but because someone's died or because of some ritual. They use the cattle, so it's also interesting. It's a cattle cult more than a normal, like just having cattle and also having religion. It's like a cattle cult, and then by the way, we also sometimes eat them as food. But anyways, it's important because the people, tea is directly related to pastoralists with the cows. And anyways, I don't want to go into all that, but I'm just saying the reason I was able to kind of figure it out is because I mapped where the supreme deities are and then where the migrations were, just once again. And then from those evidence was able to help me understand, not Graham Hancock that just looks randomly at bullshit and goes, oh, I figured it out. Some crazy unrelated shit. That, you and me are like going, no, that's not how any of that works. No. In fact, when someone tells me that, I just don't even listen to them, because I just hear an idiot talk. It's like, here's all the supreme deities. So I realize there's too many for Africa, and they seem to start too soon than I had originally thought. So that's why I had to go back to looking at how that could have happened. So all the ones that are in this south part of Africa that sticks down, that's not the one that sticks out, that part, all these ones from central and south are all related to Bantu. So I realized there's more Bantu than any other thing. But the other one that's super big is also the one on the south part of the part of West Africa that sticks out, Southwest Africa. Every one of these and all the ones in the south are the same family language. It's because Bantu is Niger-Congo B, and all those ones in the top are Niger-Congo A. And if you take that, that's almost all the deities. The only ones else is like the people in the north, the Berbers, which are related in a sense also to like the Egypt and all that. And those ones are Afro-Asiatic, which also could have came in when R did, because R comes in about 8,000 to 7,000. So that's after T, and from the same place in the Middle East, meaning it would have come in, and they were also pastoralists. So they would have also been part of this cattle cult worship from the Middle East. So that explains all those deities. Boom. It could have been J, but I'm now thinking that J might have brought the pre-supreme deity, paganism. And then T at 9,000 or so, 9,500 or something. And then at 8,000 and 7,000, R coming in explains all this. Those two things explain everything on that picture. So that to me helped me understand. Like I said, unlike Graham, I look at the evidence first and then I try to figure it out. I know, shame on me. What's wrong? That's not the way to do. You're supposed to have the same theory for 30 years that has no evidence and just keep that until you find evidence.
No, and those maps you just showed me with the tDNA and the supreme deity and cattle cult, that's interesting because from what I've researched, looking at the Neolithic package, like agriculture, domesticated cattle, things like that, and megaliths, wind back the clock, and it seems to really start up in that area, like Anatolia, 100%. Middle East.
Oh, 100%. Here, I'll show you just so you don't think that I'm not going to give you the real map for T. There's the real map for T. So anyone who thinks I'm making shit up, no, I am not.
Probably not a coincidence that Africa has a cattle cult and supreme deity worship.
Right, exactly.
And then everywhere up here in the Neolithic also has it.
Yeah, so it literally comes probably down from southeast Turkey, over near where the cattle stuff. Anyways, but we'll go, I like to do mythology, so we're going to go do that for sure also. But let's go back to, I'm just saying, because people always think that I just rag on Graham Hancock as an idiot and a liar and make shit up from nothing, but and then they say, oh well, I have speculations. Mine are called reasoned speculations.
It's different type of speculation. The speculation he does, it's not really speculation, and it actually causes damage.
Oh,
people.
My stuff. When scholars look at my stuff, they go, "Hey, you might be onto something." When they look at his shit, they're like, "Hey, you're a dumbass. Stop saying that."
Yeah, and it's a bigger problem too because people just buy up his stuff and they think because he has a British accent and he's old and has glasses that makes him intelligent, incredible. It doesn't. And the stuff he talks about and the people who believe it, it does real damage because there's this one guy, Sacred Geometry Decoded.
Yeah.
And he spent a lot of time listening to what Graham had to say until Graham started making claims about stonemasonry, which Sacred Geometry was familiar with. And what Sacred Geometry has said multiple times when debunking Graham Hancock and all these other ones, it gets young people, like, and even adults, to think that our ancestors weren't capable of anything.
Yeah.
Like, well, to even, like, bash a stone open.
That's also, to me, where I say that he may not himself directly say his racist stuff, but he supports ideas that are inherently kind of racist because they assume that Native Americans couldn't do things or the Egyptians couldn't do things. And I'm not saying that these people, the cattle people, came in and taught them how to build. I'm saying they brought in mythology.
Yeah, it's entirely different claim than saying these, like, hunter-gatherers couldn't do anything.
Yeah, of course they could.
Yeah.
They get it, but I give obviously the reason they want to do it. Why the desire comes to do it, not that they know how. Anyways, so go ahead and read what the writing is down there.
The B2 and D1 mtDNA female haplogroup lineages likely migrated via a Pacific coastal route around 15,000 to 18,000 years ago. A wave of expansion from Asia, which relatively quickly moved down the Pacific coast to Central and South America, is often associated with maritime adaptations.
Right, and so that is in a sense my sort of summary of what they say about the D and B, and like I already talked about, which I think went with who. So go ahead and read the next part. You're going to do the reading now.
Kelp Highway Hypothesis by Dugout Canoe. As impressive as the idea that people could have traveled by boat/canoe into the Americas at a date that could and likely was pre-Clovis, is also a complete lack of any such boats that it may have been done with, as well as a complete lack of old enough large stone tools to carve out a log to make a dugout canoe. And large logs were not even possible in the Pacific Northwest until after 13,000 to 10,000 years ago, nor, as we see now, likely until around the period between 6,000 and 3,400 years ago.
Which I think is important to address because
definitely.
Even if you had the stone tools, you didn't have huge trees.
No, and
I'm saying they had no trees, but they didn't have these, humongous log trees that can hold 30 people or something. They would, so that's why it hinders the thinking that it had to be only possible with a log boat.
Well-preserved, waterlogged / wet archaeological site explorations have revealed a focused use of wood and fiber technologies spanning more than 10,500 years along the northwest coast of North America.
Which, once again, is way too young for 15 and 18.
This may make the boat idea seem dead in the water, but it does not rule out bark-made canoes, which do not require stone tools like an Adzes, a specialized wood carving tool, to construct. Bark canoes are mainly constructed from flexible sheets of bark fixed together with thin wood framing to form a canoe. They can use smaller tools, such as knives, to make. This light construction method also means they are temporary and would not likely last thousands of years to be found, thus providing them as a method used in something like the Kelp Highway hypothesis. But that does not mean they weren't used. We just don't know.
Right, and the one thing when I was doing the research about this was that bark canoes seem popular in North Asia, like in Siberia, almost all the way from Scandinavia to Far East Russia, but not really popular in China. Where China seems to be more popular was the dugout canoe.
No,
but this
even more than the bark canoe, you have the hide canoe also, and that's popular in that northern zone.
Right, so we're gonna just keep reading.
The bark canoe is the archetypal North American bark canoe. These were typically built with large sections of birch bark wrapped around a lightweight wooden frame. This construction made the boats light, easy to portage, and easy to repair with local materials if they got damaged. Bark canoes typically combine lightweight tree bark with a wooden frame to create a light, maneuverable craft. The seams and cracks between sections of bark are typically sealed with some form of resin or gum. Many different trees have been used to build these canoes, so let's cover some examples of the most common types. AI overview. Bark canoes, particularly made from birch, aspen, and larch were historically significant among indigenous cultures across northern Eurasia, including Siberia, the Russian Far East, and northern China. Traditions flourished from northern Scandinavia across Siberia, Kamas, Mansi, Khanty peoples, to the Amur River basin. While bark canoes were common in northern Asia, the southern regions of Asia and East Asia, such as in China, relied more heavily on dugout canoes. Archaeologists find evidence of humans in the Japanese archipelago as early as 35,000 BCE. Judging from the dates at different archaeological sites, the earliest inhabitants of Japan seem to have migrated both northward from Taiwan and southward from Korea. The archaeological record hasn't preserved any clues as to how these Paleolithic people made the crossing to this new land, but the obstacles to doing so seem, at first glance, insurmountable without modern technology and knowledge. So, in 2013, a group of Japanese archaeologists set out to recreate the trip using only Paleolithic tools. And this reenactment of the ancient canoe voyage seemed to show this or could be how the first settlers reached Japan. Researchers tried reed bundle rafts and bamboo rafts, both of which floundered in the strong current. The bamboo also began to crack and fill with seawater, further weighing it down. The team attempted one final trip with a handmade dugout canoe, which, after rowing for over 45 hours, made it. Was their success a fluke? To test this, the team used the data from their paddling to simulate hundreds of dugout voyages starting from different points in Taiwan. They used both modern and Paleolithic oceanographic models, varying the strength of the current between ebbs and peaks. As long as the virtual boats paddled in the right direction, they made the crossing. The team used replicas of stone axes found in Japanese Paleolithic sites to fell a 1-meter thick Japanese cedar tree. They peeled off the bark and covered a seating area in the center of the trunk. While dugout canoes from the Paleolithic haven't survived in Japanese archaeological sites, dugouts from the later Jomon period, starting around 14,000 BCE, boast burn marks on the inside. In turn, the team polished the inside of their craft with fire. One of the oldest known examples of a Native American 16-foot birch bark canoe is on display at the museum in Maine, where indigenous tribes have used them for thousands of years. It's an example of the type of canoe that was critically important to the history and culture of the Wabanaki, the first people of parts of northern New England and Atlantic Canada. Our research project built and navigated in a reconstructed replica bark canoe to prove its seaworthiness and the way it could have been used in that region by a people whose way of life depended on the sea. If possible, we intended to navigate a long distance. Our first surprise after launching her was her great stability. We had been influenced by Martin Guzzin's work, where he constantly comments about the craft's unstable balance, which is not any more unstable than any other canoe, such as a Canadian one, and is much more stable than a kayak. The most serious problem with leaks had to do with patches we had not caulked because we thought the water would not reach them. The second serious problem was due to the holes we had made to sew the bark, and water leaked into the canoe constantly till we filled them up with animal fat or clay. The latter problem was partly due to our lack of skill, as we did not really need such large holes as we had made with the awl. Natives used to cut a small cleft similar to a slit made with a penknife. They used a punch made out of a bird bone cut lengthways and sharpened at one tip, giving one of its faces a flat or concave shape. Caulking worked wonderfully, preventing water entry. We were surprised to see that, without any load and letting the canoe float freely, due to its insignificant draft, practically no water leaked into it. Researchers were surprised at the canoe's high buoyancy. According to our tests, on a calm day, without wind or waves, a canoe covers 1,000 meters, 3,279 feet, in 7 minutes and 30 seconds, which means slightly over 4 knots. In fact, this was the best speed after several runs, during which we paddled steadily. These Indians seldom venture outside the kelp, by the aid of which they pull themselves along. Charles Wilkes wrote in 1842.
Right, and I thought that was interesting that you could actually pull yourself along on the kelp.
Yeah, that's definitely interesting. Somewhat contemptuously, he was referring to navigation across the kelp, which was feared by all other types of vessels. Our tests across banks of live kelp were...
So it's saying that whether other vessels, like say logs and stuff or regular boats, are too heavy, where this light thing floats on top of the kelp, and actually the kelp is not hurting it at all, where other heavier boats have more problems with the kelp. I think that's interesting.
Yeah.
For the kelp highway hypothesis, I mean.
Mm-hmm. Our tests across banks of live kelp were excellent. The canoe slid over them as if they were a denser surface without slowing down. The seaweed made the water calmer, which allowed the canoe to move faster. The distance these canoes could cover, apart from the speed the canoe can develop, depends mainly on the navigation conditions, the willingness of those paddling, and their fitness, nourishment, age, skill. Charles Wilkes, 1842, 1842 mentions them being used to sail across Nassau Bay, a distance of some 10 or 12 miles, 16 to 19 kilometers. Under normal conditions, the bark canoe lasted from 6 months to 1 year.
Right, so it definitely wouldn't last thousands for us to find. So,
No,
and
if
the
it's
fact that it
deteriorating
works,
just with normal use after that short of a time.
right,
Yeah.
and it also shows that it seems to work the best in the Kelp highway hypothesis. And also, because of the lack of large trees, it even more to me points to a bark thing as opposed to a dugout as a possibility. And then also would explain why they don't find older adzes up there or stuff to make the possible dugouts, because you wouldn't need to have them.
No, because what you find up there are your stone spear points, whether ground stone or like chipped lithics. But you could use those points as knives also.
You could put them on a small handle and use them to carve your bark boat.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, and you don't have large trees that you'd need for dugouts, but you have small ones.
Correct.
Like really small ones, and you could
tie tons of small ones together with different barks. It doesn't have to be the same tree. I find it to be very highly likely, more likely even than the dugouts, because there's not the trees and there's not the stone tools to support that hypothesis. But there would be no way for us to know. But since we know it is even the most effective to use in those conditions like the kelp, it really makes it seem like that's an answer, or it could be.
I think it's reasonable. AI overview. Experiments in seafaring bark canoes involve the reconstruction and testing of traditional watercraft, particularly birch bark canoes, North America, and various bark canoes, Australia, to evaluate their seaworthiness, construction methods, and performance over long distances. These experiments serve to validate historical and ethnographic data, proving the technological sophistication of indigenous watercraft that often outperformed heavier European boats in specific environments.
Like the kelp, which is why, like I said, and it's also interesting that the C1B did go to Australia and then also went to North America, and you find bark canoes in both places. And so even more, like I said, for me, and then the fact that it's all tons of bark canoes are more common in Siberia and less common in China, it starts to be that, man, that sure seems like a better explanation that fits the data we have, like the no big, carving tools and the not having the trees being big.
Yeah, and even looking to the south in Australia, did you see that recent study showing that like some of their traditions could go back over 10,000 years?
Yeah, no, I have not seen it, but I know that their traditions are that old. Their language is that old.
Well, the thing with the article is it wasn't just speculation. They have evidence to confirm that.
Cool.
And so, like this bark watercraft thing, that could possibly be one of those ancient traditions.
I absolutely agree.
We just don't have a lot of evidence for it because, like we just talked about, bark watercraft is going to decay really quickly. Really quickly.
So it's another thing about going back to, I watched the thing of people making a dugout canoe because I wanted to understand. And I'm for sure that they didn't do it when they probably cut it, let it dry 6 months, a year, and then did it. Because I watched people try to do it while it was wet. You can't burn the inside. It really will not work. It's too wet.
Yeah, it's the wood is green.
Wood is green. And also they finally got to burn it once they got most of it carved out, and they did it in the water, which I thought was interesting. They lit it on fire and then they put mud and stuff in parts of the boat they didn't want to burn. I just thought it was really interesting. And then I didn't know, you had talked before about the dugout canoe parking lots in Florida and in the Great Lakes, but I really didn't understand that that's how they stored them. The guy that they went in the video I watched, the reconstruction thing, they went first to go see a dugout canoe, and the guy's like, okay, here's the dugout canoe, let's get it. And then the guy's like, where? It's just water. And he goes, oh, it's under the water. He goes, what? He goes, oh yeah, that's how we store them. He's like, what? He goes, oh, I've been storing it that way for 5 years. I bring it out for a day or two, and I put it right back into the water. So that blew my mind. I thought that the ones in the water were they sunk because there was something wrong with them, and that's why we found them. Not that's how they stored them. That blew my mind. I was like, I didn't know that. So
no, it's pretty cool what they figured out. How to preserve wood for longer.
Right.
Just storing your canoe in water, that way it doesn't dry rot. If you just leave it out, yeah.
Yeah, it's just amazing. But then if you have thousands of years to practice, you can see where it's not like they just started making these things.
No. And even by that time, like before we move on, even by that time in Wisconsin, they weren't just making simple dugout canoes. They were injuring live trees beforehand, letting them form scar tissue. And then once that scar tissue had hardened, then they cut down the tree and make the bark canoe.
Wow, that's interesting.
The scars, they make the canoe more waterproof.
Huh.
Water has a harder time penetrating the wood itself. So that's incredible to me, because it really suggests a long-term thinking.
Oh,
like,
absolutely.
They're planning this stuff decades in advance.
Yeah, not simple.
No, not by a long shot.
Right.
Kelp Highway Hypothesis by Skin Boats. Skin boats were vital for the survival of Arctic sea mammal hunters who had to navigate and hunt amidst sea ice, where bark boats would be crushed or punctured, and wooden boats were too heavy to be hauled up on top of ice floes where currents or wind caused the leads to close. In a pinch, a tear or puncture in a skin boat was easily repaired with a piece of your boot, a needle, and thread. Ever imagine what the evolutionary jump felt like between crossing a river, bear hugging a floating log, and that first inaugural voyage in a dugout tree trunk? Imagine then the resourceful person who took it one step further, fashioning a floating tree trunk where there were no trees. Who developed the idea of making a frame that would function as that tree trunk? Was the idea to cover it in the skin of an animal, or the bark of a tree concurring mental event, or did one participate the other? In any event, the evolutionary stages that took us from clinging to flotsam in a river to constructing and commanding a floating vessel are truly remarkable. There have been 4 types of skin boats developed in the past 18,000 years in a tool/building stage. In the speculatively ordered sequence of development are the coracle, umiak, canoe, and kayak. Because of their frailty, there are few, if any, early ancient examples of skin boats. Frames and skins just don't last. What do last, however, are cave drawings, etchings on pottery, and in rare cases, accurate models of boats, toys perhaps, of vessels presumably used during the artisan's life. The earliest known kayak is a small model about 5,000 years old. It was simply a spindle-shaped frame with what looked like 2 seal skins pulled tightly over it. Skin boats in Scandinavia? Håkon Glorstad is a professor of archaeology whose research covers Stone Age archaeology of Scandinavia, posed the question, where are the missing boats? And discussed the post-glacial colonization along the Norwegian coast northwards. He demonstrates that, in taking our archaeological evidence seriously, despite its fragmentary nature, archaeologists can make meaningful contributions to our understanding of human societies and their history. In this case, a significant amount of maritime transport and seafaring throughout the Pleistocene and Mesolithic, including the very early pioneering period, can be inferred by looking at artifact distribution and site location, and also by incorporating comparative material produced by ethnography. While not all discussants were in favor of Glorstad's interpretation that log boats were the major driver of this migration, most were confident that seafaring technologies could be addressed using indirect evidence and acknowledged the idea that some arguments could be made from the absence of certain evidence. For the pitted ware culture of the early and middle Neolithic, 3500 to 2300 BCE, or 5500 to 4300 years ago, in the Baltic region, including Kattegat and Skagerrak, we are in a similar situation. As is well known, we know that PWC groups strongly depended on exploiting the maritime sphere, which makes it all but certain that they had highly developed maritime technology. Intact examples of seagoing boats that can be connected to the pitted ware culture, however, remain extremely elusive. This is a common problem in ancient maritime archaeology, as the succeeding Bronze Age is also plagued by the same conundrum. Researchers are convinced that at this later period, plank-built boats were used on a massive scale. Yet, apart from some log boats and a bark canoe, no advanced vessel has ever been found. Solid knowledge about boat technology through direct finds only begins with the Iron Age and the discovery of the pre-Roman Iron Age Hjort Spring boat, as well as other Iron Age vessels. For the pitted ware culture, it would be easy, intuitively straightforward, to simply take ethnographic parallel hunter-fisher-gatherer societies as analogies and assume that Neolithic populations had the same maritime capabilities. However, if we want to gain specific knowledge about local groups and how they used and adapted to the environments they were presented with, then a simple comparative study is not sufficient. We need to analyze other material and see between the cracks that are left by our fragmentary archaeological record. In the following, we will present evidence that may point to the use of different boat boat technologies. We will ask whether the pitted ware culture groups utilized seals in the production of sealskin boats. We believe that our analysis will show that skin boats were the most likely watercraft used by pitted ware culture people, and that considerable direct and indirect evidence exists to back up this proposal. Although finds of Neolithic boats from Scandinavia are extremely rare, there are a number of archaeological, ethnographic, and ethnohistorical parallels that can be used to fill in the gaps of our understanding of the possible types of watercraft that could have been used by Stone Age societies in the Nordic region. Throughout the world, ancient people using stone technologies have built elaborate and sophisticated watercraft that were capable of long-distance, open ocean voyages. By the late Pleistocene, human populations in the Americas were able to navigate icy waters between glacial refugia to reach coastal regions of Pacific North America. From these examples, it is clear that ancient humans navigated open seas from very early times and had developed sophisticated watercraft by at least the Middle Paleolithic, long before we are likely to find remains of such craft in the archaeological record. One of the most common types of boats used by Stone Age cultures throughout the world is the dugout canoe or log boat. The oldest archaeologically identified boat find from Pes in the Netherlands is a 3-meter long dugout canoe dated to 10,000 years ago, which was likely used to navigate lakes and estuary waters. In historic and ethnographic times, numerous examples of dugout canoes can be found from maritime cultures throughout the world. These range from small examples similar to the Pes canoe to massive, over 18-meter long war canoes found on the Pacific Northwest coast of North America. The range and size of dugout canoes correlates with a range of functions. While smaller dugouts were not very seaworthy craft, large Haida canoes were capable of open sea and long-distance voyages. In ancient Scandinavia, a wooden paddle from Vasterbyn in Dalarna, dated to 9,000 years ago, suggests a very old date for the use of boats.
And pause for 1 second. In California, because I did stuff about nakedness, and the Shumash in California, almost like a boat that the Vikings would have had, almost like a clinker boat, where they take wooden pieces and put them together, which I think is also pretty advanced and amazing.
Yeah, because they're tying those together and then they're like sealing the cracks with asphalt.
That's correct.
Like
so I'm just saying it's almost like another version, not a bark boat, but a wood plank boat in a sense. And once again, the fact that they have that is amazing.
Yeah, so it's another thing to keep in mind. You can make your boat with planks if you don't have large trees.
That's right, exactly. That's my point. That there's multiple ways you could do the same technology.
Yeah, you have options.
And it's not a guess, since we know for sure they were doing that. And I think they said they were at least 3,000 years old, which of course they could be older, but once again, things don't last. But they for I think it's 10 or 11,000 or something, but they were going to the Channel Islands, and so they had boats.
Yeah. We just don't know if they were plank boats or.
We don't know, but like I said, at some point, when the Europeans showed up, all they used was plank boats, which is pretty advanced boat technology. And like I said, they know that they go back a few thousand years. So it wasn't like they just, invented the technology. And someone else tried to say, well, those boats were also used by Polynesians. Maybe the Polynesians brought it across. The problem is when the Polynesians would have got there, would have been closer to 2,000. And they already had them for almost 1,000 years longer, at least.
Yeah, and what's interesting about the Chumash plank boats is those are associated with swordfish hunting. Because the Chumash, they revered the swordfish. The earliest evidence for swordfish worship in that region of Southern California is Swordfish Cave. And there were some carbon dating tests done looking at the soil layers in that cave. And that goes back at least 3,000 years, if not older.
Right.
Because of that range of error.
And this shows my art of the Chumash stuff. And also their boats they had. So they're multi-person boats. So it wasn't like just a one little, canoe or a kayak or something. They were serious boats.
Yeah, all along the Pacific. But especially with the Chumash, that plank technology, that's pretty neat. Right.
I'm just saying it's another thing to remember that once again, and these people often, the men especially, were naked, the children and stuff. So, and the women, their breasts were exposed. So they just had a little apron and sense in front of them. So the thought, though, like we talked about before, just because someone has a clothing style that is either naked or lightly clothed, like you said, loincloths or something, that doesn't equal primitive.
Yeah, just because people associate it with being primitive doesn't mean it at all. It could just be a fashion style.
Right, it's hot, so wearing no clothes.
Yeah, that too, it's practical.
It's practical. Anyway, getting out of this, we have to get out of this mindset. Well, they couldn't do these advanced kind of things. Really? How do you know that?
Yeah, exactly. Does Graham Hancock have the answer?
Yeah. Well, he would say it's space aliens brought it to him. Or the great white man taught him how to do plank boats.
Yeah.
Vikings.
Yeah, something. Gotta be something.
Gotta be something. It can't be them.
Yeah.
There was
considerable variability in the seaworthiness of dugout canoes depending on their length, width, and construction characteristics. Large, expanded side boats, such as those used by the Haida in North America, could carry large crews and were capable of long-distance voyages in the open ocean. Likewise, massive canoes, such as those found at the Marmota Lake in Italy, were likely seaworthy craft. Extremely large dugout canoes carrying many dozens of paddlers were also used for open ocean trade in ancient Mesoamerica. On the other hand, ethnohistoric data from Pacific North America suggests that smaller dugouts with widths of less than 1 meter were considered more dangerous than other boat types due to the risk of rolling over in rough seas, and were mostly used on lakes or rivers. Boats made from reed bundles are also a widespread and certainly very ancient form of watercraft. In Pacific North America, small boats shaped from 3 to 5 bundles of reeds are ethnohistorically documented as being commonly used for nearshore fishing, the navigation of estuaries, and occasional open ocean voyages under good conditions. Similar reed boats are still used today in Pacific South America by fishers in coastal areas and freshwater lakes. Larger reed boats, such as those used in ancient Egypt and Mesopotamia, were capable of longer voyages in the open sea, especially if waterproofed with tar. Unfortunately, reed boats are highly perishable and are highly unlikely to be preserved archaeologically. Tools used to cut reeds, however, might be possible to identify in the archaeological record, especially with the help of use-wear analysis. For example, on flint sickles, of which thousands exist in Scandinavia and around the Baltic Sea from the Mesolithic through to the Late Bronze Age. Composite boats, made from combinations of dugouts, reed bundles, and planks, are another critical category of ancient boats that are often overlooked in the archaeological literature. By combining a dugout log hull with reed or plank sides, ancient mariners and boat engineers could design very seaworthy craft. An excellent example of a boat of this type comes from Cedros Island off the Pacific coast of Mexico, where indigenous islanders built such boats. Although these composite boats were able to navigate rougher seas than simple dugouts or reed craft, a major drawback is the relatively slower speed. Skin boats are another type of highly seaworthy watercraft that was used by many different cultures throughout the world. Skin boats were especially common in Arctic environments, such as Greenland, Canada, Alaska, and Siberia, but were also commonly used in historic times across much of North America and in parts of Europe, such as Iceland and Brittany. In Europe, the currach was a similar boat used during historic times in Ireland and Brittany. It has also been suggested on many theoretical grounds that skin boats were used in Scandinavia during the early Mesolithic, but both direct and indirect evidence is scarce. Glorstad has pointed to a lack of evidence for skin boat use during the Mesolithic as a reason to focus instead on log boats as likely seagoing vessels. One of the classic examples of a skin boat is the Inuit umiak, which was made from seal skins sewn over a frame of wood or bone and waterproofed with seal oil. Umiaks were often around 10 meters in length and could carry up to 15 passengers. Occasionally, especially large craft of up to 10 meters were built. A lightweight boat, the umiak, was capable 18 meters. That's pretty huge. A lightweight boat, the umiak, was capable of long-distance voyages and was especially adapted to Arctic terrain due to its ability to be easily lifted from the water and carried over ice. Where are the missing boats? In Norway, specialized marine adaptation and high mobility based on traffic with seafaring skin boats are key elements in a new synthesis of the colonization process. The main argument is that the long-term structure structures of Mesolithic settlement and subsistence in Norway are key to understanding the colonization of this landscape. Key elements in such a discussion are the nature of the early Mesolithic transport and communication systems. It is reasonable to question the range of mobility and the seagoing quality of the vessels.
And then we have a picture which you sent me, and then I reworked it with more than one picture because I thought it gives a better understanding.
Yeah, this is showing on the left different artifacts associated with the Ocean Bay tradition, which is in Kodiak Island, Alaska, and parts of the coastal mainland going down into the Aleutian Islands, but mostly on Kodiak Island. On the bottom left is a serrated slate spearhead. Above that is a bone harpoon, and to the left is a bone fishhook. On the top are different slate items. On the right are woodworking tools. What's interesting to me is these woodworking tools only start appearing towards the very end of the Ocean Bay tradition. And this is why I sent it to you, because it directly relates to this Kelp highway hypothesis.
Right.
Because how are they getting around? How are they reaching the mainland?
Right. They would have had to gone right by that island.
Yeah, there's several miles to get to the mainland even back then.
Yeah, no, I think it's reasonable. I appreciate you sharing that with me.
Oh yeah, no problem.
Like I said, that's what I like about both of us is we look at the actual evidence and then try to build a thinking from the evidence, not do the Hancock and have an idea that didn't start with evidence and then kind of look, and if you don't find evidence, you keep the theory anyway.
Yeah, you don't.
What the hell?
Yeah, you don't peer review, don't do anything. Yeah, but no, I sent you this because I was thinking about the Kelp highway hypothesis, and if they were using like you had said, and like we had just talked about a bit earlier, like after the Ice Age, you're not going to have big trees up there, and Ocean Bay people, they're adapting to that like immediate post Ice Age landscape. There still aren't going to be massive trees up there,
right? Because they don't get massive until 6,000 to 3,000. So yeah, this makes sense that what they're doing before that, which is which they are part of, would then help us to know what could have been before them.
Yeah, they're evolving out of these older traditions that would have used that Kelp highway traveling along the coast, and they would have settled in Kodiak Island and Alaska's southern shore.
Absolutely.
And you don't see any giant woodworking tools.
No,
it's just like slate points, slate knives, and hints that they're doing a lot of stuff with bone and wood. But of course, the bone and wood decays.
Right.
So like right there, you're missing like probably half, if not more, of their material culture, which is unfortunate.
Oh yeah, I agree.
Alaska's Ocean Bay tradition. More than 7,500 years ago, Alaska's first maritime specialists emerged along the southern coasts. Called Ocean Bay and the ancestors of today's Alutiiq, they deftly navigated Shelikof Strait and were the first to cross to Kodiak Island. Along the way, they took full advantage of the sea life variety the currents presented them. Seals, sea lions, clams, otters, even porpoises on occasion. They used the skins to craft small boats in which they plied some of the most challenging and productive waters in the world, routinely facing off against big mammals with sharp teeth. Creating semi-permanent settlements along the coast, Ocean Bay people were pioneers of maritime skill and living that wouldn't become common until millennia later. To master their watery environment, they quarried slate from outcrops, where specialists refined the rock to create bayonets. Others crafted stone lamps that, when filled with sea mammal blubber oil, provided gathering places in the winter darkness. Other items became refined maritime tools as well. Clam picks made of bone, sea mammal bone hooks for deep sea fishing, and kelp fishing line. So right there, they're utilizing the kelp.
Isn't that wild?
Chronology of the Ocean Bay tradition on Kodiak Island, Alaska. Stratigraphic and radiocarbon analysis of the Rice Ridge site. The Rice Ridge site provides the only known deeply stratified archaeological deposits on the Kodiak archipelago that retain a substantial and well-preserved faunal assemblage associated with the Ocean Bay tradition. A suite of 22 radiocarbon dates was obtained from 11 discrete strata from the site, spanning several thousand years of the early to middle Holocene. Calibrated age estimates of the deposits range between about 7,600 and 4,200 years ago, corresponding with much of the Ocean Bay 1 and 2 periods. Alternating occupation surfaces and and midden deposits accumulated during 3 discrete episodes, separated by 2 hiatuses of several hundred years each. Such periods of abandonment are not seen in the radiocarbon sequences of the few other well-dated ocean bay sites in the Kodiak archipelago, and highlight the data gaps that must be overcome to obtain a better understanding of ocean bay settlement and subsistence at the regional scale. Kodiak archipelago and relatively early archaeological components identified on the Alaskan Peninsula mainland across Shelikof Strait to the west, as well as on the southern Kenai Peninsula to the north. Similarities have also been highlighted between ocean bay lithic technology and the early archaeological record of the Anangula phase of the eastern Aleutian Islands, dating from around 9,000 to 4,000 years ago. Specifically, the use of blades and microblades in slotted bone points and architectural features. Kodiak Island has one of the richest documented archaeological records in the North Pacific and one of the more well-established bodies of archaeological research, or of anthropological research, which provides a detailed picture of past Aleutic lifeways extending back millennia. Characterization of early Kodiak populations along the North Pacific coast remains elusive despite this record, and a growing data set from which a cultural historical sequence has been defined, and models of settlement, subsistence, technology, and social complexity have been tested. Questions regarding the early period of the culture historical framework persist, as well as uncertainty about the social, technological, and ecological dimensions of the people who lived here during the early and middle Holocene. Until recently, characterization of such dimensions during this early period of Kodiak Island, termed the Ocean Bay tradition, was limited to intensive investigation at only a few sites. Research conducted to date provides general chronological limits for the Ocean Bay tradition, defines broad patterns in its material culture, technology, and generates explanations for the evolution of social complexity on Kodiak Island. The overall time frame of occupation for this portion of Rice Ridge thus begins possibly as early as 6,000 Cal BCE and ends by about 21,000 Cal BCE. When considering the two delta limits of the dates within the sequence, generally conforming to the established time frame of the entire Ocean Bay tradition. Data suggests that the Rice Ridge deposits represent human occupation between about 7,600 and 4,200 years ago, corresponding with most of the age range conventionally defined for the Ocean Bay tradition.
Right, and then we have it in blue, your thoughts you gave to me, which inspired me to go look up this stuff you just read.
I think it's important to address Alaska's Ocean Bay tradition to the Adzes/Woodworking and Kelp Highway. They were a maritime and marine hunting culture based on Kodiak Island. They're considered ancestors of the modern Aleutian people. They used ground slate tools, bone hooks and harpoons, red ochre, found on house floors, and were semi-sedentary, but didn't use adzes. Archaeologists think they used skin boats rather than dugouts. Their culture lasted from roughly 5,700 to 2,400 BCE. Ocean Bay is interesting because archaeologists have noticed a similarity between their ground slate toolkit and those of the Northeast for several decades. However, the heavy woodworking tools that are well known for Eastern traditions, such as Old Copper, Laurentian, or the Maritime Archaic, are absent from Ocean Bay. I think it's possible Ocean Bay people also made bark canoes or kayaks or something like those. We know they were using bone, and their ancestors were using bone needles. Finding stuff like that in the north is tricky though, because organic artifacts don't preserve well. Ocean Bay could be related to those Eastern traditions, similar to how Inuit communities across the Arctic are related, whether in Alaska or Greenland. But there's not enough evidence from the Arctic and boreal forests to say much about that. The work that's been done shows people were up there by at least 7,000 to 5,000 BCE, since groundstone tools and red ochre related burials are known south of Hudson Bay. Other finds are being made around central Quebec too, but those are mainly groundstone tools. Despite their differences, we can see a progression from small, highly mobile tribes to semi-sedentism and increased population in these highly productive littoral coastal zones. Quickly made flaked tools and bifaces gradually change into more robust groundstone tools with a strong emphasis on marine hunting, especially seals, wood, bone, and antler working, and boating, whether using dugout canoes, bark canoes, hide canoes, or rafts. By 6,500 to 6,000 BCE, people in the Northeast's early maritime archaic are hunting seals and small whales. By 4,000 to 3,500 BCE, they're hunting swordfish in the Gulf of Maine, though the region does show marine investment before this, and Maine's coastline has been sinking and eroding since the Ice Age. Archaeologists think many coastal sites are lost. This is important for all these highly productive littoral zones associated with early maritime cultures, because population-dense regions are usually along coastlines and associated river mouths. These places are now underwater water. We're already missing a big chunk of the story because of organic preservation. The lost coastlines are like having multiple chapters removed.
I totally agree. And then, which we already talked about, then I show the Q migrations, and this is me putting all of them together. So it's multiple migrations, which I've talked about before in my thinking. It's at least 4 or 5 of Q, and then we have 2 of C. So that's like 7 migrations, or at least 6. So it's which is a lot more to me than people thinking, people who just came one time.
Yeah.
And so I don't agree.
Yeah, and with this boat idea in mind, those multiple migrations could be bringing different ideas on boat design.
Right. Oh, absolutely.
So another thing to keep in mind.
Yeah, that's why I thought it was best to address several different kinds and then give reasons why the different kinds could be logical. I'm not saying I know 100%, which, I'm not going to pull a Graham Hancock and say I know.
Yeah, and even with my snippets that you've included, I'm not 100% certain about everything. I look at the evidence, what's been talked about, what's been published, and I form my reasoned thoughts from there.
Which I like that. You and me are doing the similar thing. That's how I think reasonable people should come to conclusions.
Yeah, that's how it should be done.
When people offer, like Graham Hancock, offer ideas and there isn't evidence to support those ideas, I stop listening. I mean, it's even if they could be possible, you haven't shown that they could.
Yeah.
So it's a waste of my fucking time.
Yeah, that's my big problem with him. Like, he'll take like these threads and then just start throwing stuff at the wall to see what sticks.
I have no time. I personally cannot understand why anyone. I had heard about Graham Hancock before I started like trying to debunk him or address him. But because someone said, "Oh, you seem to like have some interesting ideas. You'd probably like Graham Hancock." So I went and watched him. Why would I like Graham Hancock? I think they haven't figured out the kind of ways I come to speculations.
Yeah.
Because it's not, I don't just go, hey, I was sleeping and I had this idea that this happened and thus I spent 30 years trying to prove it and never did. What the hell no. My thing is I start with, I don't know. Let me go look.
Hey,
and then
Damien,
when I go look and I start seeing patterns of things, I go, not that I have an idea yet, but look at these patterns. And I try to get more detail. And is there a connection in some way these patterns are interacting? And then when I get that, and then I go, okay, is there possible that we can do DNA? Is there possible we can get archaeology? Is there possible I can transfer languages? Is it possible I can look at what mythology is doing? Then I go, now I have a speculation.
Yeah. It takes a lot of work to get there, though, doesn't it?
Yeah, for a reason speculation, because it's fucking reason. And that's why everybody, whether it's archaeologists, mythologists, historians, anthropologists, all like what I do, even if they're not sure it's all right. They all know no one's attacking me because they all go, that is reasonable.
Yeah, and then you get these people that come out of the woodwork saying, hey, Damien, hey, a fellow researcher, have you heard of this guy named Graham Hancock?
Yeah, right. I almost feel offended. Like, seriously? You think I would give a fuck about a moron like that?
Yeah.
No. Or then that's also the exact opposite with you. I see your stuff and I go, someone that thinks more like me.
No, it takes a lot of time though, pull this stuff together.
It does. And I appreciate all the hard work that you do. I think and that same thing with me. I try to do all this stuff and present it to the world so other people can look at the data I found and then guess what? Do more than me and go research more stuff. And if you can prove me wrong, great. Wonderful. But probably not, because most of my stuff is reasoned from the evidence. So you're probably going to eventually go, that's okay. Yeah, that's probably, that could be. It's going to be really hard for you to, in a sense, debunk me because, but like I said, if you could, and if you show me that there's something I made an error, I want to change. I want to change immediately.
Yeah, totally.
Fucking true. Which is why, like I told you before, this map, which we talked about before, I had to update some of this stuff. I changed some of the pictures because because they had the same stone tool for each place and added it to ones that I thought were not credible. And so I wanted to show the real stone tools so you get a better, assessment in thinking about what's going on. And then also I changed some of the date and wording, like with the Macedon one, I added the part where it says probably naturally occurring. That's my thoughts.
Yeah.
And this because I did like I had the stuff for the kabuki monkeys and for the other stone tools, and I also added new testing refutes the Monteverde site.
Yeah, and that's a really good addition,
right? And just like I put the one in Mexico caves, the 31,500, and I showed the stone tools too. They're not super work, and they think that it's probably just geofacts, things that are just natural occurring, like chips of stuff that fell from the ceiling of a cave, not that somebody worked them. And that's why I didn't like that little picture, because when they put the stone tool and it has 1, 2, 3, 4, 5 percussion, flaked off pieces, that does look like a stone tool that humans made. And to put that all over the place in places it doesn't belong, I felt was just, bad archaeology or bad science communication or something.
Yeah, it gives people the wrong idea.
I'm like, those things. So that's why I wanted to put more accurate stone tools to what they actually found. I went and looked up what's the actual stone tool that they're claiming could be one, and here's what it looked like. It doesn't have all kinds of pressure flakes that looks exactly like what a human would make. I mean,
and so we don't know if it's human made or just a geo artifact, like a rock that fell and cracked a certain way.
Right, which is certainly a whole bunch of rocks they found that were cracked. And to me, I don't like to. I've told you this before. Once again, I don't like just one element to be what you build your whole thing off of. I don't feel comfortable. I don't know how anybody feels that's a reasonable thing. Just one, because it just like we're going to get into mythology too. And we're going to read the blog that I wrote about what I don't like about the mythology that people like professional mythologists try to come up with dates and ages. I feel like they just go, well, there was a really old migration out of Africa, and there's mythology that now in that area, so that must be the first stuff. I'm like, what? Fuck? You're like missing. There's like 4 or 5 other migrations that came.
Yeah, you're just gonna freaking gloss over all those. Like, come on now.
And so I think it needs rethinking. I mean, I just, and also just other errors that I see in a sense, or things that could cause confusion. We're like, just to give you and we'll talk about it more. I'm not going to go into it right now a lot. So there's 2 major things that they tried to study, right, which are big myths all over the world. And one is called emergence from the underground, and the other one is earth dive, which is in a sense going down into water and pulling up land. So the other one is humans are invented. Just off its face, I don't feel it's good to put those 2 together. One is the creation of land. The other one is the creation of humans. And they look at these 2 things and go, they look like they don't touch much. They're literally 2 separate myths. How about putting land and land together and then doing a test?
Yeah.
Or humans and humans together and then seeing if there's an overlap. I just feel like it reminds me of like how you can skew research, not even maybe intentionally, but accidentally. Because the reason I know this is when I took psychology, they made a big deal about how you could look up a certain factor and just come to the conclusion that people were doing it something for a certain reason when that really had nothing to do with it, just by how you set up the research. And that's also why they like double blinds and all this other stuff. So you're not adding your bias. And so I feel like mythology should not be taken if how I want to do, which is more scientific. We can't do it in some ad hoc way. There has to be similar rigid standards to come to the similar conclusions. And so also I know that maybe mythologists aren't as wanting to do the way I want to do it, but I'm just saying I don't feel comfortable when the only thing you have is there's myths now and we know about a super old migration, and then you're building your entire thing off of that. I'm like, what the fuck?
Yeah.
Because I look at migrations, but I also look like what building? Because to me, just so you know, a lot of the old myths they try to say happened in Southeast Asia, which is basically near Australia and Indonesia and all that. Now, and show almost nothing happening in Europe. I find this archaeologically to be unsound. archaeologically, the art in Southeast Asia is very non-stylistic, just naturalistic animals. Even the hunting scene looks like just hunting, nothing ritual in a sense, something that couldn't have been ritual, but nothing to inspire me to think they're coming up with magical beings and all this mythology. The burials are almost exactly like Africa, meaning that they went thousands of miles and didn't change. So once again, it doesn't inspire me to think that new things after Africa had happened. But the exact opposite is with Europe. Europe, most of the art is symbolic. And even stuff that goes to Siberia, not directly to Europe, also seems to be like the 32,000 Reinhold site has no reference to the people in Southeast Asia, has no reference to the people in Europe, and yet it also has some symbolic etchings and stuff that do not occur in Southeast Asia. So that's why I feel that totemism goes to or is invented in Europe, shamanism is invented in Siberia, and nothing was happening in a new kind of way in Southeast Asia. Not that they had no ideas, but it was close, I feel, by looking at the evidence, to just the same stuff that left Africa. So when I hear mythologists say the exact opposite, nothing happens in Europe to them, which is bizarre because there's like tons, like most of the rock art in the world is Europe, Paleolithic. All the figurines are there. There's like the earliest symbols of writing are there. Something 31,000 to 25,000, none in Southeast Asia. So, I mean, it just the earliest bird figurines, Siberia and Europe.
Yeah.
The closest one to China is 13,000. But they were directly related probably to the dog and the Siberian ideas coming down, not the other way around. So, I mean, looking at, to me, the just one DNA and saying, well, the earliest people went there. And so that their mythology must be 50,000 years old. And I'm like, why did you think that? So I'm just making a comment that I don't like and do not feel comfortable just one reference of a thing and then saying, okay, we figured it out. Like saying the log boat. Well, log boats seem to be the oldest boats we can prove. It must be log boats. On the Kelp hypothesis, not looking into anything else or any other, and not using any other frame of thinking, and just saying, well, it has to be log boats because those are the oldest boats.
Yeah.
And for sure, they say that the log boats is how they got to Japan, so that was the answer. When you have to look at all the other data and then go, okay, there's no trees though. Oh, there's no stone tool technology though.
Yeah, that's the thing. Like, hey, you got to look at the other data. You're really limiting yourself with this small data set.
Right. And so I feel like you've added the chance for errors or for confusion of coming up with
Big
stuff.
time.
So, and then of course the next picture, let's go real quick, is Maine and Texas, where you and me live. And we're going to do a blog where we talk about the indigenous people in these areas. So that's going to be one of our future videos. And the next picture is talking about the actual DNA I know and the actual numbers of which DNA went which way, just because even once again more to give the details of the inland and the coastal route. So because I like to try to figure it out, but like you said, to put all the heat maps or whatever, put the DNA stuff and to figure out what's happened.
Yeah, just compare and contrast to get as much data as you can that's relevant to the topic and just lay it out in front of you.
Correct. And then this is the one that Graham Hancock mentions, where the Afantagora, which at some point, certainly by 13,000, they're spreading white skin and probably blonde hair and maybe even red hair. But that is not, as you see, they go by land, and they also, this is QDNA, so it doesn't help him with his R. And the QDNA people didn't have light skin. The R1B female DNA that the QDNA people were around, the female is who had the light skin alleles and the blonde hair. And I've already showed the different map before, but it doesn't relate to going anywhere where Graham Hancock wants to, like in the Americas. It literally, we can tell, it goes to Europe and to the Middle East, Cossack Mountains or Caucasus Mountains. Here's a thing. So the yellow is showing the R1 A and B of the female line who carried the different alleles for light skin. The SLC 24A5 and the SLC 45A2 goes to the Eastern hunter-gatherers and also to the Baltic. And then at 9,000, they shoot into, in a sense, Sweden. And they had broke off, that was R1b, who had both alleles. And this is female, by the way, Hancock, not men. So then the R1a females broke off and went to the Cossack Mountains. And that had the only one allele, and that is SLC 24A5. And then that's found in the Middle East. But also in the Middle East, the people that become farmers at 9,000, they have the one from the Cossack Mountains, but they also have the other allele that's found in Eastern hunter-gatherers, but they didn't get it from them because the other one came when the male DNA, which is the R2, goes down to Iran 10,000 years ago. So before 9,000, when the farmers go into Europe with the two different alleles of white skin, one from the Cossack Mountains and one from Iran. And that's where you have the two separate alleles, showing also that the alleles found in the Eastern hunter-gatherers came from Lake Baikal, and so did the stuff from the R2, bringing the other allele. And then the same allele in a sense that goes to the Cossack Mountains is the one you find in China 6,000 years ago with the Taran Basin mummies, who have the female R original. It's before R1b or R2 or anything, or R1a. It's the original branch of R for females. So it shows that that already had before the split, because we see it's two children. We see R1, and then R1 splits into R1a and R1b, and they both have the light skin alleles. But they actually start previous to that with just R in the ancient North Eurasians. Anyways, because that you can tell by the different ways it went, and they didn't directly interact these different ways. Because before some people tried to say the Cossack Mountains sent the people in Iran the light skin, but that can't be right because they have a totally different light skin allele. You see that? Uh-huh. So once again, about instead of just randomly looking at stuff, I like to look at the granular detail, and then it makes sense. When both of these give their stuff, that's why the early farmers from Antinola have the two different ones, just like the people in the Eastern hunter-gatherers also have the two different ones. But once again, it's not because they directly interact, because their interaction was more around 7,000 years ago, which is not 9,000. So it has no bearing to and why I didn't even show it, because I could have showed the 7,000 one, which then it starts interacting. But this is pre that. So it's to me unnecessary to show it, because that just confuses. But at this time, none of these are directly interacting with each other. So all of the lines are pure, so they have to start from the ancient North Eurasians. But like I said, once again, so light skin, as you notice, does not go to the Americas at this time. And also, it's important to understand the light skin alleles that they do have in the Americas, especially in the north, actually come from China and Mongolia. These other like cDNA to the younger and completely different, similar area. It's all near Lake Baikal, just the south part. So there must be something in that area that helps produce white skin, the conditions or whatever. Probably the fact that they think it's like 6 months or something out of the year they don't have sun. That probably has something to do with it. But also probably could inspire too why possibly worshiping the sky would have been a big deal, because it doesn't happen very often. Anyway,
yeah, that would make sense.
Just a thought of how you could get with the blue sky being an important deity when you're most time of gray skies and no sun. Anyways, but I'm just saying. But Graham's Hancock's thing does not work. The ancient North Eurasian light skin, once again, is not even on boats. It's like all land again. Just once again showing why that's not reasonable. And that's why I'm saying too is that, like you and me, we care about what is reasonable, what could have really happened. It's not like let's just make shit up. And this right here is me being even more granular and showing how Q became Q1 and Q2 and then also showing the Jensen people who have Q1A related were already on the Jensen River at 17,000 years ago. So also is to debunk ideas that somehow they showed up later. No, they had maybe some part of them did maybe, but the majority of them were already there for 17,000 years. So long time. And then the next picture shows the migrations of that DNA. See where it says Q1 became Q1b, and then that branched into those ones that, as you see, went down to China. As I already said, some went down to China bringing ideas. And also went to the Americas, because we know 13,000 years ago you have that bird figurine show up in North China. Yeah, right close to that area where that arrow stops. Oh, what a
imagine that.
What an amazing factor.
Yeah, amazing coincidence.
How magically. So it must be that China invented it. Just so you can understand, because I don't want you to believe me. I'm going to show you a picture, and this is like me doing the Dylan's method of the heat map. I just show you where all the birds are in their ages, and then I think, oh, what does that tell us? And so you see that in Lake Baikal, from 23 at least until 19,000 years ago, you have the bird figurines. And then in China, their oldest one is 13,000. Where if you look at Europe, it's anywhere from 43 to 33. So the idea actually might have come from Europe, because those people did, by 25,000, go to Russia. And then Russia by 24 shows up in Lake Baikal. So it isn't impossible that those ideas moved with that. And just to help you understand that, I'll show you art I made for trying to explain, in a sense, where I think gods sort of originated and how I think ideas came out of Africa and then slowly migrated to Europe and turned into something different, went to Russia, changed into something different, then goes to Siberia, which then goes down to Turkey, and then becomes gods, but wasn't really that before that point. Because I really want to understand this. I don't want to just guess. So this is me trying to explain that. So I show that an interesting thing that that all the things out of Africa are connected to this YMRCA, which means most recent common ancestor. If you notice, it's right next to where the Adzes people are. And the Adzes people created little mud dolls, which it's funny because that DNA goes up there, and then where it goes in Europe makes a bunch of dolls. I don't know if that means that the Adzes, influenced that, or the people that left had these pre-ideas of mud dolls. But the oldest, in a sense, ceramic fire doll was a female figure in Europe or whatever, almost Central Europe, and it's like 31,000 years ago. So it's possible that there's some ideas that are getting there from leaving Africa. But anyway, so then I showed in this picture, once it goes to Europe and France and in Germany, there's two different figures. One is in a sense of vagina triangle with two male animals making up her legs, like either a three being, or maybe it's the two beings and then she is connected to them in a sense, like a Mother Earth or something. I don't know. But and then the one man doesn't have any genitals, which I think could mean the primordial being that's dual gender, which is interesting because the Adzes people believe that you don't come from your mother or your father, you come from both. And they believe both give you the name, and their name is coming from the clan of the mother or the father. So in a sense, the names are connected to a spiritual sense of like a spirit. So in a sense, you have two spirits, a male and female spirit, because you have a male and a female mother and father, which would help you understand how then at Russia, they make a male and female figurine, like little totem poles at 25. And at 24, those similar totem poles show up in Lake Baikal. Then I show how the people from Lake Baikal and R1A shows up in the Middle East at 12,300. And then the earliest Göbekli Tepe is 11,500, which all these standing figures. And then 11,000 2,000 years ago or so in northern Syria, really close to where that thing is a female and male figurines that are standing on little like bench things or whatever. I think that, and especially they're standing alone, I think is talking about sky deities. I think when they sit down, that relates to the earth. And then they're standing on the little things, also like pedestals, like you're standing on a pedestal. You have authority. You're above. Anyways, but these are my reasons, speculations, looking at the actual artifacts as it goes. The migrations of humans is one factor I use. But even like in the ones on the top on the right-hand side, I show how there was a split migration. People left and split into two things. One of them went to Europe and I think made totemism. The other, both starting in animism, and the other one left into Siberia and makes shamanism. And then we know for sure the shamanism people go down to the totemist area and they both mix together, and then they end up in Lake Baikal. And then from Lake Baikal, we know that they end up in the Middle East. So you can see where these ideas are moving around. Anyways, just showing how I do my thinking and not just blind speculation from absolute silence like Graham favored.
Yeah. Oh, he does that a lot.
Yeah, that's why I say when he says stuff, I look at his stuff. I mean, I can't even take it seriously for a second. Like, why don't archaeologists take this stuff seriously? Like, there's no reason to. Nothing has been provided that would make you be inspired. Any real scholarly person to go, oh, wow. No, none of that. So this right here is showing the coastal route and the inner route, which I think both probably happened. And it shows that there was different DNA that probably supports that both of them probably happened. And so this is a video I watched on QDNA, and I tried to make it more simple to understand, but not much, just pretty much left what they already had. And then this shows the next picture. It shows the QDNA and which exact, haplogroup it is and the date. So
yeah, it's just right there on the coast.
Right on the coast, right? So I'm just trying to show you there's reasons to think what I think. And then the next picture shows different sites and, possible stone tools. Now, the Monteverdi one we know is no good.
This is an interesting one because compare the incipient Jomon spear point with the one found in the Channel Islands.
Right.
Style.
You start to go, wait a minute, that kind of looks similar.
Or even down there in southern coastal Peru.
Right.
Like it looks like it's resharpened quite a bit to the point where it's like almost useless. But you can still see that that gradual curve.
It has the too much of the similarity to say that there can't be any similar.
Yeah, and they're in those groups heading down the coast, they're bringing that red ochre tradition with them. So that's another line of evidence.
Right. And so that's like you and me. We like to see lots of lines of evidence, and then you come up with a hypothesis. Lots of lines of similarity, and then that are reasonably connected. Not just throw darts at different things that look similar and literally have no connection. What? No.
Yeah, like for South America, some of the earliest red ochre sites, they're being found near the coast.
Right. So go ahead and read this.
Kelp Highway Hypothesis. AI overview. The Kelp Highway Hypothesis proposes that the first humans to settle the Americas arrived not by land, by following a coastal highway of productive kelp forest ecosystems from Northeast Asia, Pacific coast of North and South America. Primary difficulty in proving this theory is sea level rise. Since the last ice age, melting glaciers have caused ocean levels to rise, submerging the ancient shorelines and potential archaeological sites under hundreds of feet of water and silt. The route. Starting roughly 16,000 years ago, maritime hunter-gatherers are thought to have used watercraft to skirt Pacific Rim coast. Earlier dates. Archaeological sites like Monteverde in Chile, dated to roughly 14,500 years ago. That has problems now.
Right.
And others in North America predate the opening of the land corridor. Ice barriers. Geological evidence suggests the inland corridor was likely blocked by glaciers or too resource poor to support life during the initial migration. Ecological benefits. Kelp forests acted as a biological buffer, dampening wave energy to make boat travel safer while providing a consistent, nutrient-rich buffet of shellfish, fish, marine mammals, and edible seaweed. Consistency. Because these ecosystems were similar from Japan to Baja California, and again in Southern America, migrants could use the same technology and tools throughout their journey without needing to adapt to drastically different environments. If by boats, what kind of boats? Archaeological site locations on small offshore islands indicate that people of the northwest coast had watercraft beginning in the early Holocene, 12,000 to 10,000 years ago. But direct evidence is no more than 2,000 years old. The presence of archaeological sites on small offshore islands indicates access by boat for the past 10,000 years or more, though it does not provide clues about the type of boat or whether boat types changed through time. Proponents of the hypothesis for the initial peopling of the Americas via the coastal migration route and the Kelp Highway observed that watercraft would have been necessary, which suggests that the earliest watercraft on the coast may have had parallels in Asia. Some of the first migrants on the northwest coast are unlikely to have made dugouts resembling those in the post-contact era, since forests that might supply the requisite logs did not develop till later, possibly suggesting skin boats or driftwood rafts as more plausible than dugouts. However, there is no direct archaeological evidence of any kind of watercraft until relatively recent times. Unsurprisingly, research into the origins of the northwest coast dugout canoe and its variants tends to be conjectural or limited to the past few centuries. The oldest Arctic-style skin boat specimen I know of is a 2,000-year-old piece of a sealskin kayak from the Seward Peninsula in Alaska. There are small ivory figurine-like kayak umiak models from graves of that same age in Siberia. Some archaeologists have suggested that skin boats were used on the northwest coast prior to the development of dugouts. The notion that during the early Holocene, people would have had simple and expedient watercraft appears to be rooted in conjectural evolutionary models of boat technology. Some nautical historians aim to reconstruct the evolution of modern European ships from a perspective of increasing technological complexity. However, the effort bogs down when confronting the range of small, simple types that do not line up in an obvious developmental sequence. Much like the Northwest Coast watercraft conundrum, it is not clear. For example, whether skin boats came before, after, or separate from dugouts, or were Tamala-style plank boats fit into the sequence. Other scholars have taken an adaptational approach, emphasizing that people built boats in different ways depending on geographic constraints, available materials, craft traditions, and purpose. This view has the potential to accommodate multiple boat types at the same place and time in history, but without archaeological evidence. It is no closer to elucidating past than a conjectural evolutionary scheme. It is possible that most wooden boats were recycled as firewood, mortuary furniture, or construction materials, and that lake and marsh boats and temporary use watercraft along the coast were mainly bark or reed and have preserved poorly. I further note that ethnographic and ethnohistorical studies of northwest coast sea-going dugout canoes mention that their thin hulls rendered them susceptible to splitting in half lengthwise, and that many a canoe, as well as the people and whatever else it carried, went down. Although any or all of these factors may have reduced the number of boats entombed in the wet site deposits awaiting discovery by future archaeologists, it seems unlikely this would have happened only on the northwest coast. Boats and transport are a major theme for the initial peopling of the Americas in the later Archaic era. The Kelp Highway hypothesis is noteworthy for me because it helps explain, besides cultures relying on traditional tools because they work well, why groups living in Siberia and Eastern Asia were producing spear points virtually identical to those from Southern California. Walking by foot from Siberia to California would take centuries, but using boats, possibly a combination of rafts, dugout canoes, and maybe hide-covered canoes, cuts that time down. You can skirt the ice floes and island hop down the Pacific Northwest. Some groups venture further inland, while others keep heading south, possibly to find warmer climates and to get a sense of the new territory. A challenging part of confirming boat use during this time is the flooded coastlines in the region's climate. The Pacific Northwest is notorious for decaying organic products. Most traditional Pacific Northwest longhouses and totem poles start rotting after a few decades. There'd be almost nothing left after a couple of centuries. After 10,000 years of decay, rising ocean levels, isostatic rebound, and eroding coastlines, finding any evidence for preserved boats, seasonal campsites, houses, or anything like that is incredibly challenging. The stone points and related lithic items, scrapers, drills, knives, only tell a fraction of the story. It makes these ancient folks look simpler than they likely were. Looking at how far they traveled, all while preserving aspects of their religion, shells and red ochre burials, suggests to me they were anything but simple. I don't know if they were complex hunter-gatherers, because organic items are a key part of that, but it's tempting. Just traveling those distances, both along the coast and inland, suggests group solidarity of some kind. With what's known, I think it's safe to say they had strong values about their communities, how to honor their deceased, where it's safe to travel, and so on. For them, North America was a frontier. We don't know if they were communicating with groups already here, such as the people who left the White Sands footprints from the start, and we don't know how much they knew about North America's interior, but heading inland would have been dangerous. We get a glimpse of that with Kennewick Man, who was found with a point embedded in conflict, at least in the Pacific Northwest and later on in California, picks up between 10,000 to 5,000 BCE along the west coast, possibly from different groups with different values competing over resources, marriages, travel routes, and everything else people usually fight over. Damien's response: we can do other joint blogs, as I appreciate your thoughtful work. I want to help show others your value, Dylan. And I appreciate your work also. I've spent a lot of nights and days looking over your research, listening to Corey and you talk about ancient cultures and how they relate to modern politics, plus your interviews with professionals. Great stuff, Damien. Oh, no, I really appreciate it. I could spend like weeks, months even, just going through your stuff and digging into the references. Like, your stuff's data-packed, man. It's incredible.
Thank you. I feel likewise about your stuff. Very good.
And I have new stuff on the way, new maps, new data.
Cool. Well, I told you too that I hope that you expand even further into mythology of these different peoples on a really deep level, especially also using, the mythology database. In fact, I'm going to do with someone else, I'm going to do like a video that really goes in depth, like how to use it and stuff, because I think it's important.
Yeah, and I'm going to have to use that resource eventually, because I plan on making a map, or like even a map series showing the different burial items and how they're related, especially to red ochre.
Yeah.
It's widespread across the continent, and it seems very related to coastlines and river systems, which makes sense to me looking back at like this Kelp highway hypothesis and different routes that tradition could have taken, with the earliest red ochre usage in California clustering along the coast and the Channel Islands, or down in South America along the coast and its river systems. It seems related to me, and so I'm going to be making those. Plus, I'm working on other data right now for the Laurentians and the Old Copper Complex, getting some sites mapped out, and I'm reading different articles and journals to get more data from those. And that's what I'm doing right now for that.
That's excellent. We'll do more videos too on the Old Copper Complex and the different stuff. And I told you too, I want to do one where we also go and address your different maps, because I feel like just like mine are like so info packed that you need guidance to understand what I'm showing you.
Yeah, and while we're talking about the Kelp highway hypothesis and different boat styles, I think it's worth pointing out with the Great Lakes, with how they're ocean-like because of their size, how you need to use like ocean science to study them.
Right.
At least in Wisconsin, like southern Wisconsin, where they found that canoe parking lot, they're dugout canoes. But the thing with the Old Copper Complex and their neighbors, they had multiple styles of awls, and an awl, it's a hide working tool, or you could use it for bark working also to pierce it to make your holes. They were using different styles. They weren't just rounded. Another style, especially common style, are square awls, and experiments have been done to find out what makes those useful, and those are excellent for working with birch bark. They're not going to split your birch bark the way a round awl will. And the Old Copper Complex made a lot of square awls of different sizes too, so they might, alongside making birch bark baskets and containers and things like that, they might have been working with like an early version of a birch bark canoe.
I watched a video on how to build a birch bark canoe traditional way, and he used not round holes. So all he was using, actually, I think it was like almost a crescent or something. So it pushed through in a unique way, not round. And also, I thought it was interesting is he tied it together with roots.
That's a way you could do it. Like, if you don't want to spend the time making like proper cordage, just like dig in the dirt, find some roots.
Yeah, he used roots to tie it instead of any rope. It was just all wood from trees. I thought that was amazing to me.
Yeah,
like, wow.
That's innovative, thinking outside the box. Using what the landscape offers.
Right, it just shows that they don't even have to use, which I would think like making rope or using leather, but like no, using roots. I was like,
using roots.
Wow.
Yeah. So right there, like with this Kelp highway hypothesis, whether it's the earliest people heading down the coasts or with the Ocean Bay people, like I suppose if you could use kelp for fishing lines, you could use that. Yeah, you could use that to tie your boats together.
Yeah, because what I was thinking of using as fishing lines, probably the best way is not do it when it's wet, but let it dry so it gets hard and leathery.
Yeah, they might have been doing that too.
It would just be logical, because I've seen when it gets leathery and stuff, man, it's almost impossible, that stuff apart. When it's wet, you can, like, not that hard to rip it apart. So I would imagine, once again, it's learning how to use your environment. Yeah, so then this map that I show, it just shows different ideas coming in. They may have overlapped. They obviously weren't like spread out the way I have these things. It's just to show that they were different times and different DNAs coming in. It wasn't like all the same DNA, which I already show up above when I showed the Q DNA. So, and then of course, I think different ideas are coming in these different migrations.
Yeah, now at least one, if not all, of these migrations, you'd think that they're bringing like sewing needles with them, because those things are ancient in Siberia, and having that sewing needle, you can like work with hides. Like if they're using hide canoes, it's another. And
the thinking is that the Earth diver is anywhere from 25 to 30,000 years ago. So either it originates with Shamanism, maybe, or it comes from Lake Baikal. I think it comes from Lake Baikal, and the reason is there's thinking it doesn't go over immediately to Europe. So because if it's the 30,000 or 35 were the origin of shamanism, then it went to Europe and it went to Siberia. And so then it would be different mythology showing up. So I think it has to be after the fact, which to me makes the most sense, because the story of the Earth diver is of an island, in a sense, coming out of the water. And Lake Baikal literally has that. And so that literally, to me, where the middle part of Western Siberia, where I think shamanism starts and splits to Siberia and over to Europe, doesn't have any of that. It's like all just land. There's no, so to have this water island myth doesn't seem like it would even be logical to have, once again, because I try to look at all the environment, not just the migrations.
So that would be odd. Like when you start thinking about it, having the Earth diver myth originate like in the middle of the steppe.
You see what I'm saying?
Yeah, that's a little odd.
I don't find it convincing. So I'm going to show one of the Siberia stuff. So this is Lake Baikal, and several things are on here that make me think that it could. So one is these stones, okay? Literally, the water pushes the stone up out when it freezes, out of the water and up on top to like it produced land out of the water. This is a natural thing that happens every year, and it looks literally magical. And so I can totally see that they're just looking at their environment. They're living there for 30,000 years at 25, somewhere on there. And here is rocks that literally they're under the water and they just come up magically, and they're like floating on top of it. You know what I'm saying?
Yeah, especially if you've never seen anything like that before.
You would literally go, okay, this is magic. I would think it's magic if I didn't know science and, freezing and different stuff. So one of the reasons, multiple things are going on. One is it's freezing, but that's not why it ends up like this. The wind also makes it look like it's floating because it pushes the stuff down under, so just a little point is up in the air. But also in the top left-hand corner, it shows all these bubbles. So those bubbles are methane that are pushing up, which you can literally light on fire. So that's what the bubbles, the decaying matter in the lake, is what pushes up the rocks. So it's not magical. I mean, it would seem to people that don't know science, but I mean, the bubbles are pushing the rocks up. So then also ice circles. This shows this is huge, by the way, huge ice circle, and it like spins or whatever. I could see where you would think that something magical is occurring. Maybe even the bubbles, because they look beautiful. The bubbles in the water would look, and then you can light them on fire. I mean, the ice is on fire, like literally fire and ice, right? The magical stuff. And then also the other picture in the top right-hand corner is showing what it looks like when the ice kind of cracks in these weird ways. And it looks like it's coming out of the little island when it's just nature doing its thing. And same thing with the frozen thing. It's like the rock jetting out, and the cracks look like they're coming out of the rock. Like it's giving the impression that it's like coming out and breaking the rock, the ice or whatever. But it's not doing that. And then also the ice piles up on itself. I know this does this in the Great Lakes also, but the fact of it just naturally doing that, to someone who doesn't know, it's like it's building on itself, almost like see the myth. What happens in the earth diver is it's someone brings stuff from the ground under the water up, which all this is kind of doing that. And then when it does, then it multiplies. Well, seeing this ice where it's like multiplying and stacking on top of itself, I could totally get where they would come up with the conclusion that of the earth diver kind of thing. It's not unreasonable to me at all to come up with, when you understand the environment. Like you said, it's not reasonable to me that it happened down in this over in the steppe where there literally is no water and no islands. And no, here is an actual island and then actual water. And then the island itself also is unique because on the back side of the island, it looks like there's a dragon.
Oh, yeah.
So once again, that island where all this other stuff I already showed you is going on also has this rock that looks like a dragon, and it's in the water. It's right on the edge of the water. It looks like it's coming out of the water, part of the rock, which is this little island, effigy thing. It's a natural formation of just how the rock is, but to our eyes, it looks like a pig dragon, which is what China likes to do, which is why I also put the Hangsheng culture makes pig dragons, which look a shit ton like what that looks like, right? I mean, we're not pulling a Graham Hancock. It's close to the area. We know that people from Siberia went down there and interacted with them, and then they seem to have this pig dragon that looks a shit ton like the pig dragon on the island that is in the middle of Lake Baikal.
That's pretty incredible.
And then the shamans call it Shaman Rock.
Oh, yeah. Yeah, go figure.
And that's what this little drawing was an actual picture of a shaman and with the rock with a little dragon in the background. Yeah, because they worship it as a sacred thing. So once again, like I said, you can see where the earth diver, and then because it's possible that snake mythology and water, like the serpent, the rainbow serpent or whatever, relates to stuff like that, like water. Well, this is a pig dragon or something coming out of the water relating to this land and this rock. So, I mean, I'm just making a comment that I find that to be more convincing to the archaeology and the environment of how you can end up with a mythology that then goes to the Americas as earth dive. Just trying to show you my thinking of why I buy the Lake Baikal influence for the earth diver myth to be way more convincing than anything else to me. So I know some people think that the earth diver could relate to earth flooding and stuff during the glacier times. Nah, I don't think so. This right here, Lake Baikal, where we know everybody from both sides, because we know that the Q comes from the north part on the west, and the east-south side is where C DNA comes from, and they both went to the Americas and brought their ideas. So it's the hub, which we already talked about before. It's my hub that I always talk about because literally a lot's going on, and I think stuff relates to it. And I explain also that the people that from Russia, there's a mythologist and archaeologist or anthropologist, I'm not sure, but does stuff on the earth diver, and he feels there's multiple levels of the earth diver. It's not just one like branch. It went over more than one time, which to me is important because I think multiple migrations, and then also that the multiple times it went over, it's believed that it changed as it was going over, which I'll show you a little map so you understand. But I know it's in Russian, but you're like, what the good is this?
If I squint my eyes, I might be able to read it.
It's in Russian. So just so you understand, the gray line segments Siberia on the left side and the Americas on the other side, just so you understand. But the branching of ideas. So it shows that they have 0 and 1, and then their own mythology in the Americas they made. So that's not in a sense, Siberia. So 2 branches that stem off the main one relate to Siberia. But the other one is something that they, in a sense, evolved in the Americas, probably. And then it shows the one in Siberia has a couple branches and has number 2, which is not actually in the Americas at all, in a sense. But anyways, my point is, it just shows this is people taking science science, in a sense, to the mythology, just like you and me do. We look at not just, oh, did they go over, but what kind of happened, and what does it look like when we trace it back and try to figure it out. And it's just saying also different time frames. These are not like, older and then younger and then even younger. They're showing different times. It branches again and branches again, like regular mythology. So just to help you understand, that's what the blog is kind of in a better way. So go ahead and just read what it says there. These are my ideas mixed with his ideas. Guy from Russia.
Earth diver mythology and religious migrations into the Americas from Siberia. Number 1. Early shamanism, Yana rhinoceros horn site 32,000 years ago, and pre-ancient North Eurasian / Malta-Barrett culture 24,000 years ago. No earth diver myth and no great spirit. Number 2. Evolved shamanism mixed with ideas from European totemism shamanism, but no paganism. Earth diver mythology, MNP0, with a great spirit limited to great mystery. This earth diver myth can have any creature, any number of creatures, become the demiurge's helper as long as the least likely creature succeeds.
Right, and so just to understand, the 0, that's really like 1. Like that's the one that for sure both the Americas and Siberia have this version, the oldest one. So that's also why I think that's when it starts. I'm trying to explain to you, the first people that go over, I don't think had this. The second people that went over relate to probably the Barrett culture, which is Lake Baikal. And if you click on the thing too, right, I'll click on it. I think it shows up they say Lake Baikal, they think is the origin. Because if you go down here, see where it says doing genes and myths, ancient Malta, DNA, and earth diver mythology. And they're talking about Lake Baikal, that's the origin point of this stuff, in Russia. And see, they're saying 24,000 years old Malta site in Siberia, which is Lake Baikal. So anyways, go back. My point is, so that's why I am taking, like that person, the archaeology that we're seeing and the environment that we know has always been there since humans showed up. And then also the migrations, and then figuring that there's probably a reasonable assumption, not Graham Hancock guessing, but a reasonable assumption, there is a connection.
Number 3. Early paganistic shamanism, influenced by the early paganism of the Middle East. Sky god and goddess are now involved. Earth diver mythology, MNP1, with a great spirit, sky deity-like. This earth diver myth has a plot that is now crystallized around a pair of waterfowl in Siberia and Western North America, as well as a pair of animals in Eastern North America. Number 4. Evolved paganistic shamanism, influenced by the evolved paganism of the Middle East. Sky god and goddess are now involved. Earth diver mythology, MNP2, with a great spirit, now a high god / supreme god. This earth diver myth now only has one of the creatures dropped off, and the demiurge used to help of only one helper. The cladistics of the myth is, therefore, relatively simple. The dynamic and variable ancestral forms crystallize into progressively fewer characters.
Right, and then I also show the migrations of Q, and I show that, to me, the different times I think Q came in between this point and this point, between this point and this point, and then I think that relates to these different stuff happening. So we don't need to read all that. And then also I think the other people came in, but then goes like, remember we're talking before too about haplogroup X, which is from the Middle East, which is where I think the Middle East ideas that we talk about of paganism, the first branch come at 10,000 or so, and then I think like we talked about 5,000 years ago, then another branch comes, and that is when it actually has the Great Spirit, where it becomes more of a god, and you can see that thing move around. Just trying to, like I said, but unlike some people, I try to put the mythology and the stuff. I think this also had the turtles, because turtles don't originate in the first myth. First myth is not about turtles. Later, it's about turtles. So the first time it goes over, before it has anything to do with the Middle East, no turtles. Birds and animals are doing stuff, but no turtles. The muskrat or whatever, thing builds land, but just out of the builds like a mud island, and that mud island just grows into a thing that has nothing to do with turtles. Anyways, it's important to me because I like to try to figure out, like you, what exactly is happening, where, why, who.
Yeah, and I'm looking at the eastern side of this map with the early maritime archaic burial in that
Right.
stone cairn.
That's correct.
That's one of the things I'm researching right now. I'm getting because the early maritime archaic. It's definitely related to the later maritime archaic that are
Yes.
well known for hunting swordfish,
Right.
but they're distinct. And what's interesting is even way back then, like 7,000, 6,000 BCE, whether you're in the Gulf of Maine in Massachusetts or all the way up in central Labrador, like that far back, it seems like they're in contact with one another.
Oh,
The
yeah.
material culture is so similar. Even the stuff that they're hunting, like whales, seals, stuff like that.
Yes.
And so I'm working to get those sites mapped out and to get like a distribution map for that published, because I've been looking and I can't find one for that culture, for that
Yeah,
early
and it's
period.
really hard too, because the DNA, some of this is me kind of trying to put together really sparse stuff and come up with best conclusion, because they just don't have a lot of DNA. It's not like it's rich and understandable. So I don't like that, but I mean, this is still the most likely things of what happened and who did what, where, when. But I'm also, as you know, I'm willing to update my thinking when we get better. Just like I was willing, I didn't never even fought it 1 second when they said Monteverde was younger. I didn't go, oh, no, damn archaeologist.
No.
I just said,
Yeah.
oh, okay, cool.
Yeah, it's interesting watching that happen with people, because you can tell they've built up this narrative in their head that they really want to hang on to, because I'm guessing it does something for them. It confirms some view they have of the world, maybe, and then seeing that get really challenged, it really makes them uncomfortable.
Right, like I'm willing to say that more stuff came from Southeast Asia mythology if you can show me archaeology that seems to express that. Until that, I don't find that to be convincing. Sorry.
I mean, don't get no. It's good not to cling if there's no need to cling.
Well, I feel like the
don't.
only thing I want to cling to, Dylan, is what is true. So if you can make a convincing argument that I am somehow no longer followed the facts into what is true, why would I fight you? Like I said, it didn't even take me 10 seconds to think about Monteverde. They said, here's the date. And I said, wow, okay, boom, new date. I mean,
yeah, like don't get me wrong. It's reasonable to hang on for a while just to make sure the new data coming out is good and makes sense.
I agree, but I don't hang on. I go with I trust science, and so I trusted the old dates and I trust the new dates. If you can then come up again and show me that actually the people that did the new dates are wrong and reason to trust the old ones, I will go back to what science says.
Yeah,
I mean,
that's how science works. That's how the tools we've developed work. It's been sorting itself out for centuries.
Yeah, but I'm just saying. So it's like if one person goes, Damien, you have all these ideas, and you're not willing to change, and I'm like, you don't know me. That's like totally a lie. What the fuck? I have lots of ideas, lots of speculations, and I have sometimes changed when the stuff changes or when I understand it more, especially gods. I used to think that male gods were invented in the Balkans because they don't see any of them in a big way for me until really about 7,500 or something in the Balkans, where all of a sudden it's like a fucking explosion of them.
Yeah, and that's similar for me. Like when I first started mapping out this old copper stuff, I was going through some data files I had, and one of them noted an artifact from British Columbia. And so I was really intrigued by that one. But then I did some digging because I really wanted to make sure that this thing was found in British Columbia, and a couple locations got mixed up. Wasn't found in British Columbia.
Yeah.
Like that was one of the few artifacts in those data tables that was in the wrong place.
Yeah,
but
I think it's healthy to be open to fit the facts.
Yeah.
Not have ideas fixed that the facts have to somehow be mangled into. I said, Graham Hancock, right? He has that debate, which he says was a bad debate and all that. Well, I think the worst part of the debate is what the fuck he said. When he said, in what archaeologists have studied, yes, we can say there is no evidence of an advanced civilization. So how does anyone listen to him after that?
He's just going to keep moving the goalposts. Well, you haven't excavated every single square inch of the Earth, so we have to look somewhere else. What about the former water bodies on Mars, 3-4 billion years ago? Have you searched there?
As you see when I talk about what I think a god is or a thing of the earth diver myth, I show you evidence and reason and archaeology and geography and migrations and all this stuff and other people's thinking, not just mine, that also support my thinking, where his is no evidence. That right there, I feel like, how is that not the end of Graham Hancock? Just that right there, no evidence.
And it seems like he's still getting popular, because apparently he just really gave it to Flint in this podcast. That's what people think. Flint really got his butt handed to him,
which is hilarious because
it is.
Hancock
it is.
goes, I think you won and you really showed me up, and then all of a sudden later it becomes that he won. Like, did you watch the same shit I watched?
Yeah, and then it goes.
Someone asked me before, am I on Flint's side? Okay, I am not an academic. I am an anarchist historian and prehistorian. I only care about teaching the plain truth.
Yeah.
And let me tell you, if you're asking me, who do I think taught the plain truth? Was it Graham Hancock, Mr. I have no evidence, or Flint Dibble? How do you think that's even a challenge to figure that out?
Yeah, I gotta hand it to Flint.
Right, but not because I'm not a fanboy of him or something.
I was just gonna say that. I was gonna say that same thing. I'm not a Flint fanboy.
No, I don't have Flint
I follow him
or things. Or
yeah,
I do like his archaeology stuff. I asked him to come on my show before. He said yes, and then he dropped out and wouldn't do it. So do I like him for doing that? No, but he also has the right to not come on my show.
That's unfortunate. I would have liked.
But my point is, so I don't have a reason to defend him.
Mm-hmm.
He literally wouldn't come on my show. He said yes, and then he didn't for whatever reason he wants to come up with. And I feel like it doesn't make me mad. What I say is, I know he likes to focus more on archaeology and shit that's proven. And I know I do a lot of speculations from evidence that maybe make him uncomfortable. I don't know. I'm also willing to change, and if he thinks I did something wrong, I'm willing to hear him tell me. But anyways, my point is, so just so people understand, I don't have a reason to defend him and be on his side. I'm on fucking truth's side. If he happens to be on that same side, then we're partners in the sense, in the same battle. And not that he's my leader or some shit.
Yeah.
But
yeah, he's definitely not my leader. I like that he's presenting good information, and he's trying to counteract all this pseudoscience that's just cropping up everywhere and becoming mainstream to the point where it's on Netflix, with multiple seasons.
Yeah, I'm just making a comment that, just like you, and just so people understand, I don't have a bias towards him. I do like the fact that, and I've said this to him, which he did not respond, which I also think is kind of odd because I'm giving him a compliment and he never even liked it or said anything. But once again, he doesn't have to for me to say I believe that he's teaching truth.
Yeah.
But I said to him that I really like that most academics try to not be political. He makes political stuff often. I share it because I like it. He doesn't acknowledge that I acknowledged him. I still share it because it's true what the fuck he's saying.
Yeah.
He doesn't have to say it. I don't fanboy, and he doesn't have to appreciate me for me to go, what he's saying is fucking true.
Yeah, I follow Flint. I respect the work that he's doing. I think it's really necessary. He's liked some of my stuff. He doesn't follow me back. But John Hoops and I follow each other.
Yeah.
We've had some interactions, not a lot, but lately he barely interacts.
Well, that's his own thing. I think he used to interact with me all the time. John Hoops used to share stuff with me all the time, and him talk privately often, and that hasn't happened. And by the way, Flint does follow me. So does that guy. I can't remember his name. He's from Germany. He does Göbekli Tepe.
Oh, the archaeologist over there.
Yeah, he's famous.
Lee Clare.
No, not Lee Clare. Another one from Germany. Anyways, if I told you, he's been on several shows. He's famous. He follows me also, and he even shared my thing where I explain how shamanism ends up in Göbekli Tepe, influencing its ideas. He shared it and he said, "This is interesting." And I've shared stuff with him before, and he said,
"Yeah, you have me interesting." If
it's Jens Norcroft, or not Roth. Anyways.
Okay, yeah, I know who you're talking about.
So yeah, he had said to me, because I even showed him about the how I think that the mounds turn into pyramids, and mountains, and then mounds, and then mountains, and then pyramids, step pyramids, and then regular pyramids. And he said, "Nice, that's a great approach to compare these phenomena. I'm looking forward to read more about your ideas." Yeah, so that's a
great compliment.
Well, I'm just making a comment. So once again, does that sound like the things people say to Graham Hancock? No.
No.
So,
I mean, of course, his fans are going to say stuff like that. Like, they're always going to pat him on the back.
Right. But these people, like, once again, it's not like they're my fans. I would say John Hoops was a little bit sort of, he even said he kind of was a fan of my stuff because he really appreciated and liked what I, but it's not like they all say that, but yet they all are not attacking me and do ask me and talk to me. Just like Ancient Americas, he had the archaeology helped him with the Inca stuff. I'm trying to remember who that person is to tell you. He's an archaeologist. He's an archaeologist that helped the Ancient America guys have research on the rock building for Peru. I think it was Pumapunka, maybe. I don't know. But anyways, about how they fit together and stuff. And that archaeologist has talked to me before and asked me questions about stuff or comment and liked some of my stuff, especially about mythology. Me and him talked about how I was talking about the earth diver, and he said, do you think, and also like we're going to do a video too about primordial waters and to understand how that's really related to a lot of myths. And he said to me that, do I think that could relate to Viracocha mythology? And I said, yeah, because in a sense, Viracocha is talking about having a foam beard, and thus Viracocha to do that would be a wave or the water itself. And he supposedly, Viracocha mythology, he comes out of the water and is able to walk on water and stuff, sort of like the Jesus myth.
Yeah,
and it also uses islands or things from the lake water to make the moon, make the stuff. So it's almost like a reverse earth diver myth where they're taking the land out of the lake and throwing it into space to make the stuff. Anyways, so I said, yes, I think that is related to me, to the primordial waters, and because it's creating the universe in a sense out of the lake water, and then Viracocha is part of that, and it's the foam beard, I mean, or whatever, to me really sounds like it's relating to the waves and stuff, which is, anyways. And there's other deities that have beards that are related to water, which is important to understand because those people themselves didn't really have beards. And that's also why the Spanish thought that, oh, it must be talking about white people. And that's why Graham Hancock gets confused and goes, oh, that's a white deity. Like, no. When it says white thing, what it's talking about is the foam, the white foam from the waves on the lake because of the wind. No. Yeah, white, not what you're talking about. But anyways, and also like the bearded serpent, like an Aztec, has the beard, which I think that once again, when you understand, like at Lake Baikal, the serpent being in the water related, and in Africa, the serpent's water related, and in Australia, also the rainbow serpent is water related, and it's all over the Australia. Here's a map that I made because nobody else did, so someone had to do it. And all those purple spots are where they have the rainbow snake stories. There could be some other ones that I have missed, but this is just to give a general idea. It's pretty much the whole continent. And then the rock art, though, for the rainbow serpent is mainly located in the north, which shows that maybe it came in there and then spread down. I don't know. It's not.
Yeah, that's possible from the stuff I've looked at.
Right.
Like a northern route in that Kimberley region.
Right.
Because that's where, like, a lot of the Wandjina, like the cloud and rain spirit rock art, that's where a lot of the clusters.
That's correct.
And
yes.
There's growing evidence that there was like some sporadic contact with maybe the Lapita people when they were moving through the island chain just to the east of Australia.
Right.
And there's a bit of evidence that they might have settled down for a short while in northern Australia before like possibly packing up and leaving.
Yeah.
But there still needs to be a lot more work done there.
Right. But I'm just trying to show also that snakes and rain or whatever is an old motif, and it's got a lot of distribution. Back to the blog now that we took a little detour, but I actually enjoy when we do detours. So this is showing the burial that is in Labrador, that's like the oldest in the sense dolmen sort of thing or whatever grave, and it also has red ochre, and they also burn stuff on both sides of the grave, which I also think is interesting. And I had said to you that it was haplogroup X and Q. I can't find where I saw that. So I do know the Maritime Archaic, like whatever 6,000 years has it, but I don't know where I
had looked for the study that looked at the genetics for the Maritime Archaic and how they're different from later ones.
Right.
They included a data table showing each sample that they had in the haplogroups that were associated with those samples.
Right.
They're thinking X entered that region around like 6,000, between 6,000 and 4,000 BCE. Like that's their concern conservative estimate, but from what you've been showing, it's entirely possible that it entered that region at that early time.
Right.
Way
Yeah.
back-
I'm just
way
saying
back
that
then.
I tried to refine this thing that says that, because I had done this a long time ago, and I tried to refine where exactly I had got that thing for being in that grave. So I don't know, but I'm willing to update, just like I said before. If I find new stuff, I really wish they would do a whole bunch of archaeology, in DNA to figure stuff out even better.
Oh, yeah. That's
But-
really what we're missing. We have the
Right.
artifacts, we have the sites. We're just missing genetics. We're missing a huge chapter.
better genetics info to hone it up. Like I said, you can see that it looks like the dolmens come out of the area, because everywhere that the X goes, people are building things.
Yeah.
And shell mounds and
that too.
all that. So it's
It's interesting when you start thinking about it. Like you find the shell mounds in these regions also, even though the shell mounds are widespread. It's still interesting.
Like I said, I try to look at the stuff and figure it out. And then this is my thoughts that the Lake Baikal and the mountains seem to also be probably an area that relates to a lot of this mythology and the reason for building these structures. Like it's because like even in Mesopotamia, they call it the mountain of God. They're ziggurat. So they're calling it a mountain, even though it's like a step, pyramid sort of thing. So I know there's deeper like mythology behind this. And then the pyramids in Egypt are calling it the Mount of Creation, which sometimes they show as a mountain. And then Babylonian makes stuff, and they also call it the Axis Mundi Mount. So it's like there's a lot of reason to think that all this is related or connected to me, both in movements and then ideas and stuff. All is going on. And you also showed the dolmens and stuff happening, in Scandinavia, which some of this relates to movements coming from, remember the first one I showed about blonde hair, people from Lake Baikal get over here about 13,000 years ago to the Baltic and end up in Sweden about 9,000. Well, you have here, 10,200.
Okay. I want to point out some things about this map because the main focus for this map are meant to be the seeds. I left other items on and I shouldn't have. I'm gonna have to remake this map. It's not a professional map, just something I whipped up to show people. Okay, this early date up top right at the coast, that is the earliest date for this region that I've been able to find for their gouges. The same gouge style that we find in Eastern North America. And that's been talked about in the literature for decades, since at least the 1940s. It's known.
Right, and I'm just saying that these people, the first people that get up in this area are guaranteed R1A. That's who went up there. So, and the R1A literally comes from Lake Baikal. See, this shows how the people got up there. So see, 10,300, they get up there, which matches your time. And then they only mix with the Western hunter-gatherers in the south parts. All of the north is R1A related in a sense, or mainly. There's, I guess, a little tiny bit of Western hunter-gatherers in there. It's mainly related to the R1A.
Yeah, and with those gouges, they're being interpreted as woodworking tools, especially for dugout canoes. But the thing with the Baltic, not just the Baltic, the whole Fenno-Scandia region, even heading out east into the northern Urals, they found like a lot of preserved wooden items, like everything from wooden moose heads to ladles, like beautifully carved ladles, to oars with geometric designs on them. And so, that actually is pretty awesome, because if the traditions over here are like anything similar to what was going on in North America and around the Great Lakes, like especially seeing that they're doing this like dolmen seed thing with these gouges in the slate and the red ochre, like it gives us an idea of what wooden items those people around the Great Lakes would have been making. Might have been making, I should say.
Yeah, I think it absolutely. And then this right here shows the Uralic stuff later, which is NDNA, and how all these artworks are all showing similar stuff.
No, it's cool because if you look at those woodworking tools and the greatest pocket for those things is around Fenno-Scandia, especially Finland and Estonia. If you head eastward onto the steppe, if you look at the north and certain major rivers, you'll find pockets of these things, and they're younger, almost overlaps with this rock art.
Yeah, it's pretty amazing.
So that's interesting.
And then down here, the bottom part of it shows how the language broke off and what came first. Fenno-Scandinavia is the younger part of this branch. And then this right here shows Indo-Scandinavia in relation to like shamanistic rock art with snakes. We already talked about snakes.
Yeah, and that's one of those wooden items that's preserved.
Right. 4,400 wooden item. Yeah. And then over here, like you have the dolmen stuff. I think it's awesome because you and me both think that there's a connection to all of this. We're not just showing stuff on both Scandinavia and America and just guessing. We're showing why it's reasonable. And I'm trying to show DNA people we know moved in these different areas.
I think the most important thing here, because like with this seed thing, I was hesitant to even talk with you about it because it's gotten so wrapped up in the transatlantic theories. Like the Celtics or the Assyrians or the Egyptians were here, so on and so forth.
Yeah, I don't.
What I've noticed when people talk about these things, they'll like rip them out of context.
Right.
Like they'll just focus on Scandinavia and the New England region. They won't do what we're doing and showing like the global context. It's not as simple as one migration. This heads here. It's global. There are multiple migrations. It's
there's different DNA, like I said. So the R1A never went to the Americas to me, not till Europeans came. So it shows that we know that the ancient North Eurasians were P, were Q, were R. Well, both R1A, R1B, and R2. So, and those peoples did different things, but they're sharing similar cultural life ways.
Yeah. No, and even genetics that have been done for the Maritime Archaic, where you find stuff like this, there's no R at all.
There isn't. And that's why I'm saying it's not. So people like, that's like Graham Hancock. Oh, it must be the same people. No, it's similar ideas, which is what I keep trying to show wrong. It's similar ideas come from similar places that shared ideas among different genetics, sometimes different languages, but still sharing similar stuff. And then you showed some of the rocks, which I think is interesting. Yeah, I like your stuff. I think that, like I said, people need to be following you and looking at your ideas. And I like the connection between far distant things. We're both coming to the same conclusions, actually not because of each other, which also I think is a good thing, because then we both looked at the data individually, not as a group.
That's the important thing. We're coming to like similar conclusions independently
from both looking at the data. And so to me, that's, like I said, that's why I find it to be like awesome that you and me are both like by ourselves, not really knowing what each other is doing that much and coming into similar conclusions about similar stuff. But also it's interesting too, because you and my approach is not exactly the same. So it wasn't like we followed the exact model the same, but close. I think that, to me in general, I think that both you and me have the same attitude. We just want the truth.
Yeah.
And we know the only way you're going to find the truth is by looking at granular data. And then almost like you and me do, plot it on maps and then see if there's any, relation to stuff. I mean, that, I don't know how else you can do it.
Like we focus on the big picture, especially me and you with the maps showing the giant cultural migrations and multiple migrations often, but we also focus on the artifacts and individual sites, like what you've shown with totem poles and different things like that throughout history, or like I'm showing here with individual copper artifacts that have been found.
Right, yeah, and totem poles, exactly. Like I have the one where I think where the totem poles were the couples that I already showed, but I also think there's evidence for totem pole migration in Asia as well, coming from Siberia. Like I said, because of that, though, it changes to me what the ideas are, because when people think, oh, well, this people must have done this and gave everybody these ideas and mythology-wise, and they don't look at the data for the archaeology like I do here, like about totem poles. When I show the times, show what they looked like, and then how I think it migrated. It helps you to understand. Certainly, it doesn't look the opposite way, like it came from China and it was all invented there. Not the way that the dispersals look. So
it looks like it probably originates somewhere around Lake Baikal and then heads west with the Shagir idol. 11,500 years old. And there's even similar stuff like that totem, like that ranked statue almost.
Yes.
Like we find stuff like that in Anatolia, Tas Tepler, Gobekli Tepe.
That's
area.
Right. Well, and
they're made of stone.
Well, yes, and that's what I told you that Jens Norcroft shared was my one on that very thing about the migrations from Siberia, because they know for a fact that Siberian stone tools, not just DNA, but the stone tools show up in the Middle East, in Turkey and all that. So, and they know that the people from Siberia stone tools were used at Göbekli Tepe. So it's not, in fact, there's a blog that says Göbekli, Siberian, influence Göbekli Tepe. Yeah, that's what I think too. Because that's what the DNA, shows, and the migrations, and then also the artifacts, which, like I said, why I don't like just one way to express or to think about what's going on. You got to look at all of it. And then you see patterns, not just random guessing. And I'd like to think that. That's not how you do stuff. So this is the one that he shared, the archaeologist that does Göbekli Tepe, and said that, he likes my ideas. Yeah, because I show ideas that are worth liking. But just like you show the same thing. The ideas worth liking. It's not, me just thinking, oh, well, you're a nice person, Dylan, so I'm going to believe you. I look at your stuff and I go, you're doing stuff that makes sense. That's why I would believe you.
Well, one of the things I'm looking to do with these maps and the graphs and like data tables I want to make is not only present information in a way that's not typically presented, like all colorful and stylized like this, but presenting information that isn't getting presented just like that. A lot of this stuff, it's so niche that when you talk to people about it, they often have like no clue what you're talking about, especially with North America.
Right.
And so like with this old copper stuff, and even further east with the Laurentians and Maritime Archaic, a lot of people, even academics, focusing on this stuff, they're unfamiliar with it. And that's a problem for me, because they're trying to reconstruct these societies as best they can, but they're not focusing on the big picture. They're just focusing on these tiny pockets.
I totally agree. Same thing I say about the mythology. When you only focus on one little thing and you think you understand, but you're not getting the big picture and all the stuff going on, you can't possibly be correct.
No, and that's like one of the big reasons why I think the classic view of the old copper complex in this era around the Great Lakes is flawed. I don't think they were highly mobile hunter-gatherers, not exclusively, because when you look at the big picture, you start finding problems. Like all the way out to the coast, you're finding similar like item forms, not just isolated, dozens and dozens, like hundreds of these things. It's like the East at this time, it's just like a stone, bone, wooden antler version of what the copper people are doing, and you won't know about that if you only focus on the copper people. As soon as you look at the big picture, it looks more like they're complex hunter-gatherers than anything else, with like a
and I told you a long time ago that I think that is what it is. I am not convinced by the evidence as a whole, the assumptions that these are just equalitarian hunter-gatherers that are just moving around constantly. If that was true, then the whole area should be almost the same, because if they're all moving around, right, then how could there be different areas doing different things?
And not just that, like, why is all this copper getting hoarded in Wisconsin? Why is it only after this culture fades away that copper becomes widespread?
Exactly.
So
who's controlling the copper?
Exactly. Yeah, definitely. Who's controlling the production and export of that stuff? Like, there's so much logistics, just the distance alone. Like, how are they doing all this if they're like these unorganized small bands?
It doesn't make
sense to me. No.
I don't. Just because, in other words, that's what goes back to, like I was saying, I don't just because someone's an archaeologist assume, okay, they're 100% right about every thought they have. No. I think about what they say in relation to what's going on, and then sometimes I disagree with them. Not on every single thing, but that's why I'm saying, like, I wouldn't be I really like John Hoops a lot. He isn't doing as much now as he was doing before. One, because people really were attacking him when he was doing a lot of stuff. I understand it's tiring. I've been an activist, and then on the street, and after 15 years, I stopped because it burned out. So I understand fighting all the time, and that's your whole life. It becomes tiring as fuck.
Yeah, but I appreciate the work you've done, though.
Thank you.
And like just having that that section on your blog about your activism work, all those photos, great stuff. I appreciate the work you've done.
Thank you. I appreciate that. Yeah, so I because I felt like people aren't doing it, and we need to get out there and fucking do this shit, in a real way, because it matters. I feel like it's because some people think I just hate gods. I hate fucking lies. That's the same reason I hate the Graham Hancock shit. It's because it's fucking lies, and it deludes people to believe. And then also, to me, even worse worse than that, even worse than believing the lies. They stop believing science. What the fuck?
Yeah,
So,
that's the big problem with a lot of these people.
It's a secondary problem. It's not just that it's this single. Same thing with people believe gods. People that believe gods, if they just believe gods, but still 100% believed in that philosophy or logic is true, and they believe that science is true, and they believe that people can live their lives as they want, and didn't try to fucking indoctrinate children and just allow people to believe what they want, and just they believe differently, I wouldn't give a fuck. But that's not the world we live in. Those son of a bitches want to take over the fucking government, the world, tell me what books they can fucking read, and now they want to push Bibles in the fucking schools. I mean, and not believe and question fucking evolution, and I was like, what the fuck? So that's from the beginning why I felt like we got to do something, especially to me. I turned atheist at 35 in college, in a college course on the Bible. That is what reading it in a more scholarly way, like we're doing, where you're adding archaeology and really looking at the facts, I stopped believing. And I didn't go to agnosticism, I don't know. And then I realized this is all bullshit. Then how could I go, okay, I still believe? What is there to believe? I realize this is all bullshit.
Yeah, you built up that habit of belief for so long that even after you know it's bullshit, your brain's like, well, wait a minute, just hold on.
So, but and even at the beginning, right? So when I did that, I didn't know there was atheism or like people that were out atheists. I didn't know any of that shit because no one does that. That's why I did it. Why I took time to be an activist, because people don't know. It's not who they're going door to door trying to push Christianity. Atheists aren't doing anything like that. So I realized that let's go back to what I'm saying. So I didn't even really become knowing about atheists. So I became an atheist in 2006. I didn't even go online and find atheist friends or anything until 2009. So like for 3 years, I didn't know there was a Richard Dawkins. I didn't know there was a Sam Harris. I didn't know that there was, American atheist groups or anything. I thought I was just one strange person that realized that the God myths were false. I didn't know that there was any people or anything. So I started like using my philosophy, getting into it, thinking and reason all on my own. That's why my stuff is like kind of different, because when I formed my concept of how to think about stuff, it had no influence from the atheist community at large. None of them influenced me. None of them. By the time I heard about them, I already had a whole idea how to think, whole idea how to research, whole idea about, evolution and everything, all on my own. Nothing to do with any of them. So they have not zero, but very little influence on my thinking. So I know one reason also why my atheism is so fucking different is because it has nothing to do with them. It's not like a carbon copy or an influence of them at all. It's like on my own. And also at the beginning too, I wasn't sure there maybe wasn't an afterlife, or there maybe wasn't spirits. Just because there wasn't God, that didn't mean that maybe there was spirits. So I wasn't sure. And so, or ghosts or something. So because people say that, and I was so I went to ghost houses, like in Savannah. I went and paid to go at night in this supposed haunted fucking mansion, a real one, not fake, but a real, and stay there. And they said, make sure you don't say anything bad. And so of course I did the exact opposite. Hey, you fucking racist dog piece of shit. I said all kinds of fuck the Confederacy, fuck the South, whatever I could think of. Fucking offensive. You fucking slave master and piece of shit. I fucking hate you. I hope you fucking suffered when you died. I mean, anyways, my point is, guess what happened? Nothing. And then they said, always hold your little light. So I did it in the pure darkness because I wanted to try to do everything they said don't do. I tried to do because I really wanted to, it's like we do the maps. I wanted to really experience, is there such thing as a ghost or whatever? And when I came out of there, I didn't believe in ghosts anymore. Not in the possible. I was done.
How about that?
But that's what I'm trying to say is, so people think, oh, Damien, you never look into things. Bullshit. I was more than willing to look into everything. That's how come I have such strong opinions, is because I've looked at the stuff, tested the stuff, and it just fucking fails in every way possible. So, and and as you know, that's also, like I said, one reason I feel like we're a great match, because you and me come at this in a really rigorous way. So maybe it's too rigorous for some people, where they feel like we throw too much data and they get drowned. Well, but that's the stuff I like.
And that's one of the things I've been having to keep in mind when talking with people who have no idea about this stuff.
Right.
Because I remember when I first started really digging into this, like, I was blown away by the material I was reading and by the stuff I was looking at, because I had no idea that this stuff was going on. Like polished quartz spheres, like dozens of those things, like giant copper tools, like beautifully made and polished woodworking tools. Like the stuff that these people were doing, it was incredible.
Oh yes.
But I have to remind myself, a lot of people don't know about this stuff, like even some academics. So like, don't just rush out of the gates. Don't open every floodgate and tell people about this. Just like work them into it.
Yeah.
Like don't overload them.
Yeah. Well, when I first talked to you, I already knew about him, but not to the deep extent that you have done. Because as you see too, it's kind of hard, because I'm trying to get like the whole world approach. So I don't spend tons and tons of time at every single spot, because it's just too much info. I mean, I've tried to go back later and get more info on the different spots, because my goal is to understand all the languages, all the migrations, all the DNA, all the archaeology that we have available, and then understand better the real what's going on. The same thing like with mythology too. I don't just go, oh, there's this one story and whatever. No, I want to know what happened, where migration stuff, and what people have done before, and really figure it out in a diligent way, which I know is not really how most people do.
No, like it's like something you had mentioned in one of your videos from a while ago. Like you were researching pottery, and you were like blown away by just how specialized somebody could get in researching and publishing on pottery. Like just being a specialist in one specific style of a specific phase of pottery.
Yes.
Yeah.
That is true.
And like,
I don't remember saying that, but I agree with you.
Oh no, it's from I'll have to find the video again. It's something I had watched I think over a year ago is the last time I saw it. It's one of your older videos with Corey.
Yeah, well, I made a lot of stuff, and as you know, I do so much broad research. It's easy for me to kind of forget, because man, I do so much things at one time. Because some people could just do just DNA, just like you said, pottery, just the archaeology, just the mythology, just any of this stuff, or just geography. I look at everything, or just one region, where I focus on all of it. I know about everywhere, which is also something I see that you do. You know more about this all over the world like I do than most people I've ever talked to.
Yeah, and it's interesting, because I what I'm focusing on right now are the Copper people and like the Great Lakes system, because I live in northern Maine. I've lived here my whole life. I'm familiar with the environment. I'm familiar with the wildlife. So I can put my shoes in a place like northern Wisconsin or Michigan's Upper Peninsula, because the environment's that similar. Even though this is what I focus on, I'm specializing in what northern hunter-gatherers were doing. So that's why you can see me chime in like here and there, like, oh, I can say a lot about this, or like sewing needles, stitching needles in Siberia 40,000 years ago.
Right.
Like that, it's a material I'm familiar with. But the thing is, like, even like you, like, I'd like to be able to talk, like, to know and talk about all these cultures, all these migrations, but we're not robots, and even I've had to tune down some of my like juggling of different topics quite a bit, because it had me jumping around too much, like focusing here, then doing stuff in China, then doing stuff in like Ireland, then coming back to the Great Lakes.
But like I said, to me personally, I like it, because then we can really go in depth in a lot of stuff where I don't feel like I can generally do that with a lot of people. Even archaeologists, often they focus on one region, one thing, or one time, even sometimes time frame in the region.
Yeah, I mean, don't get me wrong, I still do that. I still hop around, like, especially if I'm comparing artifact types or like burial styles, stuff like that. I just don't jump around as constantly like I was doing when I first got started.
Right.
But
you're going to be jumping around a lot more with me.
Like for me, when I'm researching, like right now, I'm focusing on the Great Lakes system. I'll probably focus on that for like another few months. Then I'll probably gonna be back over in Europe doing researching what the megalithic builders and the hunter gatherers around the Baltic we're doing.
Yeah.
Then after probably like 3 to 6 more months, I'll be back in the Great Lakes researching those again.
Cool. I think it's good. I think it's good to get a broad perspective because there is connections all over the place. The people were migrating and the ideas were not fixed in one continent or whatever at all. So
no,
I think that's a good thing. So I appreciate it. We're going to go ahead and wrap this up for this time. And then next time the video we'll do, I already sent you, is we're going to talk about creation of humans from clay. So
that'll be interesting because I'm only a little bit familiar with that topic.
Right. Probably the Bible, right? Where Adam is made out of dirt and then Eve is made out of his rib, which is interesting too, because that's not the only mythology that says that man and woman are made different, just so you know. There's other ones where men are made from mud and women are made from rocks or sticks or something else, in a sense. Not the same substance as man's made out of, which I think is odd. And yeah, there's all kinds of different stuff. But yeah, I think it's a good thing to, but it's also part of the series I want to finish anyways, where I just dress, the 20 different whatever mythologies, because I think I wanted to, like you started with Corey, I really want to make it where I'm addressing a lot of stuff in a deeper way than most, especially atheists do, so that people can get this broader perspective of what this mythology is going on, because a lot of people, they just don't have a broad perspective. That's the goal. But then once we do that, then we'll still be doing more mythology. I'm not stopping it there. It won't be just those specific ones. I tried to, make some specific, real important ones. We'll go to ones more that I want to talk about. And some of those we'll redo again, in a sense, not exact same thing, but similar topics. I want to do the Earth Diver more. I want to talk about the high gods more. I want to talk about the ocean more, because I think it's still really important and people just don't grasp. But we're going to do different blogs. Like I told you, I really want to do one mythology, one archaeology, one mythology, one archaeology with you to get a whole bunch of, good content out. And I really appreciate you taking time and doing the video.
And even I appreciate you just like taking the time out of your day to speak with me, because like with this copper stuff, like it's almost it's incredible for me.
We'll talk again. The next time I said we're going to do it about mythology. So I appreciate it, Dylan. And go ahead and tell people where to find you, and then we'll go ahead and close off.
Okay, you can find me on X at CopperViolette. I'm also on academia.edu. I go by Dylan Violette on there. Black background, squiggly blue lines with geometric orange copper colored shapes. That's my profile. I'm also on Reddit, and I have a personal Facebook account. I go by Dylan Violette. Picture of a guy, gray hat, holding a black lab. I mostly post on a couple groups there: Old Copper Complex in Ancient Waterways America, and Misquabic. Misquabic is Ojibwe for red metal. If you have any personal questions, if you just want to chit chat casually, you can reach me on Reddit. You can reach me on academia.edu. You can reach me on X, or you can reach me on my Facebook profile. It's up to you, but that's where you can find my stuff.
Right on. Well, and also, as always, when I do a video with you, I will post the video chats with Dylan either in the description or as a post in the comments, so that everyone can always find you. And I'll always put all of our videos that we do together in that blog. So right on.
Okay, yeah.
All right. Take care.
Talk to you later.
Hello, and welcome to my channel. I am Damien Marie AtHope. In the simplest terms, I am an atheist-humanist philosopher and prehistorical writer-researcher at DamienMarieAtHope.com. I am specifically an axiological atheist. An axiological atheism can be thought to involve ethical and value theory reasoned and moral argument driven apatheism, ignosticism, atheism, anti-theism, anti-religionism, secularism, and humanism. Axiological atheist can be understood as a value theory or a value science atheist. As an axiological atheism's ethically reasoned and constructive pro-humanity, I am an axiological thinker, value theorist. The science of goodness, worthiness, usefulness, valuableness, virtue, reliableness, accuracy, validity, morality, integrity, beneficialness, etc., etc. We axiologists have a value consciousness. And in general, we see the architecture of humanistic humanitarianism value in people that we see as dignity beings. Places and things are not. Axiology is a value theory. In its broadest sense, it involves areas of philosophy that are deemed to encompass some evaluative or evaluation aspect. Therefore, it crosses almost all domains in some way or another. Now for a more detailed terms as to what I am. I am an axiological atheist, an anti-theist, an anti-religionist, secularist, humanist, rationalist, writer, artist, poet, philosopher, advocate, activist with schooling in psychology, sociology, as well as I am an autodidact, self-taught in science, archaeology, anthropology, and philosophy. I promote science and am against pseudoscience, pseudohistory, pseudomorality, things that are found in religion.